Nishrin, you're muted. You're not audible.
Sorry, apologies for that. To the With Silicon conference. Thank you for joining us and taking the time out of your day. I know today is Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day to all the mothers who are in this conference. We appreciate your presence. Our first talk today is navigating leadership careers. It's not a talk; it's more like a back and forth. Um, you can call it a fireside chat. It's navigating leadership careers in the age of generative AI. And the primary speaker is going to be Sanghamitra Deb. She is a senior manager in AI and machine learning at Adobe, where she leverages her expertise in artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies. Welcome, Sanghamitra. Prior to joining Adobe, she served as a head of generative AI and machine learning at Chegg, where she focused on enhancing student learning experiences through large language models. During her tenure at Chegg, she progressed from a lead data scientist to a management role developing significant projects in conversational AI interfaces, recommendation systems, computer vision, graph modeling, NLP, architectural decision making, and machine learning pipelines. So the whole gamut, basically. Um, Before Chegg, Sanghamitra worked as a data scientist at Accenture, tackling diverse challenges in data modeling, architecture, and visual storytelling. She has a PhD in physics and is trained as an astrophysics physicist, and she brings a unique analytical perspective to her work across education, healthcare, and recruitment domains. Her leadership approach is informed by the scientific background, emphasizing both technical excellence and team development. She actively mentors junior data scientists and coaches professionals transitioning into data science careers. A passion and advocate for diversity in tech, Sanghamitra has organized women in data science meetups, regularly speaks at conferences just like ours today. So we truly see your passion coming through there. And she's known for her ability to effectively communicate with both technical and non technical audiences, bridging the gap between complex AI concepts and practical applications. So with that, we're going to start this fireside chat. I'm going to put Sanghamitra and myself um, in an immersive environment so we can chat and go back and forth. And our discussion today is primarily going to be on navigating leadership careers in the age of generative AI. As you all know, we are witnessing one of the most transformative moments in technology, AI, especially generative AI. And it's reshaping industries, redefining work, and creating new leadership challenges and opportunities, right? So we are in an era of unprecedented technology advancement. Yet it's a time when even as technology changes so quickly, as you know, the pace is incredibly fast, we still the fundamental needs, human needs like authenticity and trust remain. Even though everything changes around us, we have to make those things, human authenticity and trust as our constant anchors. So today we hope to kind of explore how to lead effectively in this AI driven era, which is moving so fast, while keeping those essential human values at the very core of our approaches. Uh, but in all this change that's around us, there's also a very important transformation to consider, that who gets to lead and shape this future. So today we have the privilege of hearing from a leader, Sanghamitra, who has navigated from the scientific rigor of being an astrophysicist to AI leadership, and who champions inclusive, ethical, and impactful AI innovation. So, welcome. And we aim to cover a lot of ground today. We have a lot of amazing topics to touch upon. Um, and basically, we'll explore her unique transition into AI from astrophysics, dive into some new frontiers of leading in this generative AI era, from balancing technical know how with broad level impacts to effectively advocating for AI investments. We'll also touch upon like crucial areas like how do you build inclusive teams, nurture future AI leaders, and embed responsible design in your systems, and how effectively we can focus generative AI on making a social difference. So, a lot of exciting discussions ahead. We meant this interaction to be we meant this conversation to be very interactive. So we'll go back and forth amongst ourselves, but you as an audience can also jump in and ask questions. So please feel free to do that. We open up your mic, and at any point in our, we are going to go through several topics. Feel free to join in and share your questions. So let me start with your background. So many in our audience are keen at, and myself including, to understand the different paths into this field, Sanghamitra. Many of us in the WITS community, for instance, have come from non-traditional backgrounds. Yourself, right, from astrophysics into AI. So what advice would you give to professionals from non-traditional paths, heading into AI and also into AI leadership roles?
That is a very good question. Firstly, I would like to say, Nishrin, thank you for having me. And also thank you for like having this session of like interactive chatting. I really enjoy talking about my experience and, talking about the path that led me to where I am right now. So diving back to the question, like about having non-traditional backgrounds and how to work in AI. So I would say like, so firstly for my particular case, like I came from astrophysics. Physics, like when you work in physics, you basically do a lot of math. And when you work in astrophysics, you also do like a lot of computation. So basically your programming skills naturally get developed. And astrophysics particularly also has very large collaborations. I think other physics areas too, like high energy physics. Like you have like James Webb Space Telescope, which was like more than 10 years in the build, and then it went to space. So it was international, it was huge. And so imagine working in that area and also making sure that your voice is heard, making going to meetings, online Zoom meetings, even before the pandemic, like people were doing that and making an impact. So that challenge, I think that challenge is always there, and that also translates pretty well. Just being able to collaborate with multiple different types of groups, multiple different types of people. In terms of going back to like non-traditional background and AI, one thing I would say, like, so generative AI kind of burst out like 2 years ago or maybe a little more, right? And before that, it was majorly, as we call it now, traditional machine learning. And I would say the barrier to traditional machine learning was higher in some sense because you really had to understand the models, you had to prepare, you had to get the data, prepare your data for your models, and build something. Right now with AI, like you're getting some stuff. I don't want to use the word for free, but you're getting some things without having to do that pipeline, right? So that does make the barrier like somewhat less. But at the same time, there is no free lunch, right? So as you get these, like as you can build classification models in NLP, any kind of models in NLP, generative AI can do it. You still have to invest a lot on evaluations and the whole idea of responsible AI and making sure, especially because there's a black box right now, having different types of methods to checks and balances to make sure that things work. But I would say it makes it a little easier for, at least that's what I think, for people with non-traditional background to jump in, because you still need some statistics, but I think you don't need as deep a machine learning expertise. It's also a space where there's a lot of software engineering required. So some people in their non-traditional background also develop like more engineering skills than statistical skills. So it is a broad, I would say, like the space has broadened up. I wouldn't say the amount of work has gone down, but it has opened up in different ways. In terms of how to make the transition, I would say like you would have to spend some time of your career sort of understanding the new field. In my case, like, I went to a lot of meetups, did a lot of online courses. Right now, there are like plenty of online courses in deeplearning.ai, Coursera, and you have to invest time and sort of get into what's happening right now, and then find the field that appeals to you, especially when you're making the transition. And if you're not in like industry, if you're in academia, it's very important to find something that you're passionate about, because you don't know how the industry works yet. So at least like the subject matter should really drive you.
Yeah, I so agree with you that you do need to, even though you have that foundational knowledge, right, from astrophysics, like you're used to the churning of the data, you understand the foundations behind it. The tools are new, right? What you use in AI, or the language is slightly different. So you do need to kind of bring yourself up to speed in those areas, and there are plenty of
Yeah.
material available, content available online. Courses are there for free. So that is one thing that is available to us in this uh, in this era that we are in, that information is readily available for you to make that transition to that. I wanted to touch upon something uh, a little deeper, is that it also have coming from a different background also brings kind of a unique perspective to the area. As you said, find your passion, find, it's such a broad discipline. There's so many things. There's NLP, computer vision, there's the different aspects of it. So focus on which aspect you want, and then also that you can bring a very unique perspective, which is actually can be very innovative, right? When you come from a different fields, you often see things that others might miss, right? So I always like to tell a great story about a food company. Um, I think it was a potato chip company. Just giving a very simple example, is trying to get grease. Potato chips are very greasy, and they wanted to get like grease off of potato chips. And the engineers were like shaking, were thinking about it and saying, how should we do? Maybe we just shake it off, and and uh, and the chips kept on breaking, and that's not good for them. That product quality affects product quality. So they were like a little they were struggling through that technique of getting the grease off the. So what they did was kind of reframe the problem. It's like, okay, what, we don't just need to take the grease off the potato chips. Why don't we reframe it as, how do you remove a viscous fluid from a delicate wafer, right? Chips are very delicate. So this kind of opened up the problem to a wider set of problem solvers, right? And people who were not focused in that area. Let's say if you're not a computer scientist or something like that, and you have another background, maybe you bring something in, some thought process from there. So actually what happened was, this problem was solved by a violinist. This was made a public problem from, I think NASA did this innovation challenge, and this violinist solved it by using acoustic vibrations, because even though he was not a engineer, that person was not an engineer, they knew a lot about acoustic vibrations and how they work. So it just highlights how different perspectives can also break through some expert blind spots, right? So these experts in chip making, or these mechanical engineers, it broke through their blind spots. So I think that bringing a unique perspective, I find, always leads to some kind of innovation, and it excites me. So did you find that your astrophysics perspective allowed you to kind of reframe AI problems, or see solutions that others might have not in some way?
So that is a very good question. I think not just astrophysics, from a very wide background, one of the things that diversity can bring into AI is the space of responsible AI, right? I mean, the way we do responsible AI is we think of, what are the things that can go wrong, and then we put checks and balances on it. And we know that this is not a complete list. As we learn more about AI, as we learn more about how humans use AI, we're going to increase this list. So in this space, I think people with diverse backgrounds have a lot more ability for, checking on blind spots. Like the more like we build products, right? But we are not users of the products. And so the more diverse you have your team, the more ideas would come into what makes this product more responsible. So I think from that point of view, like diversity really makes a difference. In terms of like having an astrophysics background, I would say like there's a scientific method of solving problems, right? Like you make a hypothesis, you bring in a lot of a lot of computations, a lot of statistics to basically prove or disprove the hypothesis, and then you move forward, right? And I think that really brings in like being from the astrophysics background, that brings in like a different flavor. And you also know like how far to push there, when to take a decision. So these things are really helpful when you have that like scientific rigor in the things that you've done before. And in the papers that I wrote there, you had to prove different things in very much detail. I would also say like as you move from academia to industry, you also realize that you don't go as deep. So that's something also to keep in mind, that perfect is the enemy of good. So you do learn to hold back on that, but you at least have the training to go full deep, and then you decide, depending on the problem you're trying to solve, how much rigor is required to solve it.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to share that I also have an astrophysics background.
Well,
So we have so much in common. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that about Sanghamitra. So I also have a astrophysics background, and I also transitioned into data science. And my path was pretty much yours. I took some courses because I had the fundamental physics background. So took all the courses, learned all the new tools, and absolutely, that rigorous training in deciphering signals from immense amount of noisy data sets that I'd work with, modeling complex systems, and it kind of redefined, reframing AI problems and uncovering solutions and so on. So yeah, I so agree with that. So let's delve into specific skills needed today. Generative AI is certainly introducing new leadership complexities, right? So, um, so what new leadership muscles have you had to build, and how do you coach young leaders to balance like technical depth with strategic oversight in this very fast-moving space?
yeah, that's a very good question. So I would say like one thing about generative AI is that the only thing constant is change. And I have experienced this every moment over the last 2 years. And you build something, and you build something to produce something of a certain quality, and there might be five other things that are getting built that can do the same thing with a better quality, just because there's so much competition here. There's so much. So you have to always be willing to pivot at every moment. At the same time, you do require like I mean, responsible AI is one direction. Just accuracy, like I worked in education for 8 years, so whatever we produce, like 2 plus 2 cannot be 5; it has to be 4. So, like keeping that whole accuracy and proper proper content generation, the correct content, not just like mathematical, right? Like overall, like the voice and the tone, and so all of that, like keeping all of that constant or making it better. You always have the option to make it better, but holding on to that quality, but constantly moving on shifting sands is like a completely new muscle you have to develop in the generative AI space. You have to figure out ways of versioning things, like and this is true not just in leadership, but in like technical work as well, because as you're like as the users of your product, they don't want the product to be something which is constantly shifting, right? So you have to figure out good ways to keep the product experience constant. At the same time, there might be another thing that's doing better, so you also have to like keep in mind that's happening and be able to improve the product. So it's I would say it's a constant struggle. In the past, people did planning for a half a year or a whole year or something like that. Right now, that type of planning has become very difficult if you're trying to solve something with Gen AI, because maybe 8 to 10 weeks later, like things will change enough that you won't be able to hold on to it. So even investing time in that kind of planning might not be uh, might not be useful. We still need a plan, like we still need everything. So basically, like being adaptable to constant change, which also means that the people who are actually doing the work, the ICs in my team, have to be mentally prepared to pivot very often. And so this is a conversation that I have with people pretty much all the time. Is what are you doing right now? How, like, what are the different paths it can go into? And pivot might be necessary. Like making people mentally prepared for it is very necessary. And the other part is, like, new models, new things are constantly coming in. So it's also important to know when not to change, right? Because there is a lot of noise. Like there is a lot of new things happening, but there's also not a lot of noise. So if you build something that is doing really well, and your consumers are really appreciating it, then it's like that's like a strategic part as well, is to, like, how long would you keep it constant before making changes to it. There's also another side to it, which I think is your consumers. So preparing them in some way as well is like, these are features that are coming. Also building your product in a way that if your consumers do not want to use those features, they can very easily stay away from it and go the route where you do not use a lot of AI, because some people might not want it, right? So like giving all of these, so I would say, like, your question was on leadership, but I would say preparing leadership, but preparing your consumers and preparing like pretty much everyone who's working in your company for this constant change is required.
So, and knowing when to change, I think that's also a leadership aspect that, there's a lot of noise out there. Every day there's new tools coming in. So, what to take from that noise and make it relevant to your product or the fit for your company is this
And
thing. And then building stability on shifting stand, which is always a challenging aspect to maintain. So so this rapid evolution also brings like personal change for leaders, right? So
yeah.
how do you, as a person, how do you stay balanced, staying technically current, right, while scaling your impact through leadership? And specifically, how do you stay hands-on enough to make those informed technical decisions, right, that you have to make without getting into the nitty-gritty
Yeah, like,
code or data or something like that?
so for regular work, I actually, like, I do reviews, data reviews, code reviews with my team. Not for all projects at all the time, because that's very hard, but I'm definitely doing that as and when necessary. So I would say I'm pretty much plugged in to what is going on with work within my team, but also a little bit around my team, because a lot of Gen AI right now is also connecting different parts. In terms of, like, also for personal growth, right? Ideally, what I should do, or what as leaders we should do, is find some time to do like a hands-on project yourself. But it's very hard to find time to actually do that. And there are like so many problems you have to solve that unless you get like a very deep focus time, it's hard to be like successful in a hands-on project as well. So for that purpose, what I have carved out for myself is I will, it's not possible like every day, and it's not possible all the time, but during some downtime, I will carve out some time and do a project. Maybe this project takes a week, and I get 1 day or half a day out of several weeks to finish it. But it's only on periods of time, like it's not all the time. And the rest of the time, I try to stay up to date as much as possible. And Yeah, I mean the space of AI is also infinite, so we, like, it's fine to also not know everything that's going on. And even if you know most, I would say, even if you know 50% of the things, that's like a lot.
That's a good number to note. So is there any particular routine or team practice that helps everybody stay updated? Like, is there something that you typically use?
So, in the past, I have definitely done regular journal clubs where people would either bring in papers. It was not like limited to papers because I've mainly worked in application and product development. Bring in papers or new techniques or new ways of doing things, and discuss it. And it typically the idea there was go a little bit beyond what you're doing right now. So we don't necessarily have to bring it in product, but what would be a very nice to have kind of a thing. And I think that really helps in sort of like knowledge sharing and everything. At the same time, those things get very hard when you're like really gearing towards production and trying to get things done. People really don't have time to read it. So there's like always a balance. And um, I started with weekly journal clubs and eventually it became like once in 2 weeks. But that was fine.
Yeah, there's always that balancing act that you have to do. What's you need to get out to the production or to your customers versus the learning process, internal
Yeah.
learning process, and keeping ourselves up to date. So that's always a challenge, and it is good to carve out that focus time. I feel that we get so involved in like putting out fires or day-to-day things or getting things out of as needed on schedule that we forget that, yeah, there is that focus time that we need to just kind of mull through the thoughts and things that you want to kind of explore, right? So
Yeah.
obviously that time to yourself is crucial.
Yeah, that part is important, not just for the technical part, but even for, thinking about the strategic vision for the product or the company that you're working for. You really need to calm yourself down and think of these other things we want to do. What solves this? Should we be doing these things? So you need some time to actually think about these problems.
Yeah. So shifting gears a little bit, since this is a WITS conference, is that if you're comfortable with sharing, are there any tips specifically from women leaders on negotiating this kind of balance, especially in environments where they may face extra scrutiny or technical, credibility challenges? So,
So I would say like this is true for, I would say this would be true for all leaders, but for women leaders especially, like figure out what you're pushing for. Have a good justification. It might be a POC. It might be from your past experience that you've done this so many times, and so you think this is correct. So find enough like strength and proof, for instance, for whatever you're pushing for, and then speak up in different forums to ask for it, and like point out what if you don't get it, what goes wrong or what it brings in. For instance, I really like to push for like this 20% time of people to build something innovative. And it's very hard to get when you're like, again, when you're pushing for deadlines. And you also suggest solutions for it. Like one of the solutions I suggest for it is it cannot be like one day every week because that it's hard to do a project that way. And it's also hard to get that time out when you're against a deadline. But choose a downtime and choose a time when there is like let there be a time during the year where there isn't that many deadlines, and then do the 20% project then. So like find different ways of justifying it, and don't get disheartened if you hear no. Like you can bring it up again. And what I have seen is for most of the projects, both as an IC and as a manager that I have gotten buy-in for, a lot of the times it was not a yes when I first introduced it. And you introduce it to different people, you introduce it in different forums. Maybe you're introducing something that is of tomorrow. For instance, in 2023, when we were talking about agents, nobody was talking about agents. So it took a while for agents to get the funding that needed. So don't get disheartened, and a no doesn't mean anything personal. It's just like with whatever is going on at that moment. And keep pushing for your agenda. Also, the other part is we should also go back and retrospect. Maybe the agenda needs to be changed a little bit. Maybe the way we are voicing it needs to be changed a little bit when you're hearing a no. So there's like both parts.
right. I think that point about, making that small high impact pilots to demonstrate value. And then, one thing also I encourage people is visual storytelling, right? To make it or whatever you're suggesting very tangible. It can be incredible, powerful, uh, technology, because tech is complex. And also, I liked your point about, that even if it's a no, it's okay. I think you build resilience in yourself as a person when you hear no. When you hear no, I want to know why. I become more curious, right? What is the feedback behind this? How can maybe there's a way to improve, or maybe it doesn't align with some of the higher level objectives of the department, or production goals. Then how can I kind of take this whatever proposal I have and drive it in that direction? So if I hear no, I become more resilient, and I want to know. I get curious about. I want to know why, and get the feedback. And that's very, very powerful, right? To understand that feedback. And so we need to develop. Yeah, no is fine, and that's like I feel that's a relaxed muscle for me these days. It's like it's okay to hear a no, but then what can I learn from it? How do I, uh, use my curiosity, and find out what's going on, and
Yeah, and
and
the
and
point you
make
made
it better.
about feedback is a very, very good point. Like getting feedback on what what your ideas are and what people think about it, even ahead of time before you go and present it, and before you try to get buy-in, makes a huge difference. Like you can speak to a large number of your cross-functional partners and see like what people feel about it, and that way, you're prepared when you're actually going and asking for resources.
Absolutely, feedback at all levels is always welcome. All right. For let's say, okay, let's shift to a topic that's clearly that you're passionate about, which is vital for the future of AI, building effective and responsible teams. You have, in your experience, you've built and been a part of teams as well as built teams. So, given your advocacy for diversity in tech, how do you build inclusive AI teams? And why is diversity particularly important in generative AI development?
Yeah, that is a very good question. So first, I'll address the building inclusive teams. Uh, so it's important. So like it's important to have a certain level of diversity, and then after that, it can become organic.
Mhm.
So I worked at Czech for 8 years, and one of the things I would say is we somehow organically became very diverse. Like there were quite a few women in AI, machine learning. And so I feel like because we had a certain mass, we attracted more. And but a methodical way of doing it is in the recruitment pipeline, like just have more diversity in the pool of candidates who are being interviewed. And that doesn't hurt in any way. You're just getting people in the door. So that's one way. And then there's also a whole journey after you hire, right? You could be hiring and then people might be leaving because the environment is not right. So after hiring, I think it's very important to nurture an environment where all voices are heard. Like there is psychological safety, there is trust within the team, and people can freely talk about what the issues are. And then as a leader, as a manager, you should also be someone whom people, if they are having some issues, people could directly come and talk to you. So having that like psychological guardrail is very important to retain diversity and like make a place that's attractive to diverse candidates. It's not an easy process, so it's something that requires work, just like anything else. As we build AI product, like it's a lot of work to build a product, right? And then if you want to build diverse teams, it's also a lot of work to build the diverse teams and be aware of where you are in that process. Um, so that's like one part. The other part is, why do we think like diversity is particularly important in AI? So I think in terms of like building AI products, we even with not just within the teams, but in general, we need a lot of teams to come together. Like you need people from ethics, people from legal, people from product managers, engineers, of course, like all of these people to come together to basically decide on what things should be. For instance, like in the past, product managers could write briefs, and those briefs could be executed on. But right now, what is possible with AI is something that engineers know more than product managers, but the product managers still have to do their job. So these two people have to come really close together to even build a roadmap, right? Like what can we do? So that from that point of view, diversity is important. As I mentioned before, responsible AI, or what makes AI responsible. The more diverse your team is in terms of backgrounds, gender, all other types, the more inputs you can get, the more people can point out that this is where it's failing. And it's a work in progress. So for anything, like I'm taking like responsible AI in one direction, diversity in another direction. And I feel like there are certain practices we are following, but there are certain practices we still don't know that need to be included to make things better. And I think the best way to do it is to treat it as like it cannot be just volunteering. Like it's to treat it as work that needs to be put in.
Agree. It's not just enough to hire diverse talent, but also to kind of retain that talent, right? Because it's a fast moving technology, and you want your right people staying engaged for a good amount of time so that you can move forward. And to do that, you kind of nurture that talent by providing them psychological safety, hearing them out, hearing the voices, bringing the collaborative nature of different people together to kind of bring that that diversity or to creating that AI to be more robust, responsible, and truly with serving the wide spectrum of human beings that are there, and in effect avoiding all these critical biases which show up.
One more thing I would like to add here is that, this 10 years ago, there was like data science, big data, machine learning,
Right.
which was a boom. And after that boom, I would say, like after a while, we started thinking about diversity, and then, women in data science and all of this. I mean, there were some women in tech already existed, but I feel like more diversity efforts existed. So when like the boom happens, I feel a lot of the time diversity falls behind. Like there are so many things to do, just like journal club falls behind. And so it's important to remember that we cannot let it slip. And that's a hard one.
Yeah. And as leaders, we need to constantly be on it, right?
Yeah.
That you have to. Yeah, I agree so much. And looking to develop talent within AI. So AI talent, from being great technologists to influential decision makers and innovators. And broadly, what do organizations need to do in order to, I know you touched upon some of this, but what do organizations need to do to help more diverse voices to rise to leadership roles in AI?
Yeah, so that is a very good question. And I think so one part is like hearing everybody's voices, but then bringing those voices to the tables that are important to the decision making platforms. So that's how like diverse ideas would go forward, and diversity in leadership would also go forward. And I think that is something organizations can consciously do. Like again, like putting some effort on it, putting some work on it, like even remembering that did we take into account everybody's opinion here. So I remember like maybe like 6 to 8 months ago, people constantly ask in meetings and different places, like what do you think about, because we are building new stuff, right? And not everybody speaks up all the time. So we decided to go from like asking is one point, then we decided to do a survey with the same questions. And then we got some answers that were very unique and different from what we got when we just asked in meetings. And even after that, someone asked, do we really have this problem? And then we said we definitely do, since we're seeing it in the survey, and people in our company, in our org, are actually saying that this is an issue and it needs to change. And so I think it's also important to, like, the means of collecting that, hearing that voices, means of collecting that feedback, maybe that also requires diversity. And just like, yeah, like giving a podium to everyone in a way that they are freely able to express how they feel. At the same time, if you're going in the leadership route, for sure, you have to speak up in a meeting and actually um, basically express your point of view, even if you feel you're not being heard. Like, if you feel you're not being heard, don't take it personally. I would say, like, a lot of the times, just express what you have to say with, like, professionally and calmly, and then just um, wait to see, like, what the next step is. And I have seen, like, again, changing the language, repeating what you're saying to different audiences does make a difference.
Yeah, I think that point about expressing yourself in meetings and letting yourself, even if they don't hear or react to you, believe me, they have heard. They know that somebody has spoken up, has mentioned something. So this is kind of a way of, getting your voice heard, I would say. And also, kind of to bring people up to leadership, you need to give them visibility, right? You need to get them
Yeah,
engaged in those.
you definitely need to give them the right podium. And I have just joined Adobe, but in my, like, previous company, for instance, company all hands, and all hands is one example, but there would be, like, other group meetings is not the right word, like group activities where you get to lead a project, or get to do, like, a design review, or you get to stand in front of a crowd and basically share your ideas. And sometimes it might not be your ideas, it might be the ideas of a team of people. So those kinds of activities also really help people gain confidence, give them the podium to actually express themselves. And creating those kinds of environments that also feel very safe are very essential.
Yeah, that it's okay, even if your ideas don't pan out, the effort was made, the
Yeah, or you could be
process was.
wrong, like,
Yeah.
and as someone who's putting, I mean, especially if you're working in Gen AI, you have to move so fast that, looking back, some of the things you've done were not correct. Like, that's something we always realize, right? So
Right.
um we should have the humility to accept that as well. Like, but it's okay to be wrong, and then sort of ideate, brainstorm, and get to something that works.
Right. And also kind of you kind of tailor mentorship and guidance to individuals, right, to help them kind of
Yeah.
rise in that leadership roles. So yeah, those are very essential.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. And in terms of, like, mentorship and guidance, I think one of the things that I've helped people is sometimes we pigeonhole ourselves into an idea and we find it very hard to get out of it, right? And that's something I've, like, really helped people sort of see the bigger picture, see, like, whatever is going on. And then this idea is a very small part of, like, this very big thing that's happening. And changing this idea doesn't change overall what's happening, does not change your project, it does not change anything. It's just like a little shift you have to make to be successful here.
Absolutely. So I know we are on time, so I would want to give some time for the audience to get in their questions. Is there any final thoughts or any one key piece of advice you'd like to leave our audience with as they navigate their own leadership careers in this exciting age of, I guess, the Gen
Yeah,
AI?
one of the things I would say is that as we progress through our career, we do a lot of things. So write down all your successes, right? And then weave a story. Maybe weave multiple stories with what is your key success point, and depending on who your audience is, like, make sure you have that story ready. Practice the stories and make sure you have that story ready so you can talk about yourself, to talk about your success point and match with that audience, and then get success in that direction. And that's very important, and we don't do it often enough. We forget what we have achieved. Like, I've seen that.
Yeah, because we're on to the next thing, and next thing is like, okay, I had to take a step back and think about what I've accomplished. And I love the fact that you mentioned the storytelling aspect of it. And stories can be defined differently for different people, right? So having those stories in your head about, okay, this is my audience, this is the story I need to tell to this audience, is so impactful and so underrated that power of storytelling is something I would really like to emphasize to this audience, that it can take you far. So a lot of gold nuggets that from our conversation today. So thank you so much for this conversation. You know, your journey from astrophysics or any other background into AI. It's a superpower. I feel it's an asset. So make use of that asset, by bringing innovative ideas, a different perspective to your this thing, and then building your leadership muscles. Things are shifting around you. How to keep a stable thinking, building agility into yourself and your thought process and your work culture. That's also kind of important. And always try to think strategic. I know as engineers, sometimes when we want to like to reason, people ask, what should I be doing? Is one key thing is start thinking strategically. We as engineers get involved in our technical stuff, and we sometimes forget to think strategically. What do people need from us? What is the overall goal? How do I go and achieve that? Or how do I help my division or department or achieve that? So keeping that strategic muscle always exercised is always a good thing, and can take you far in leadership. So with that, Sanghamitra, thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your time, and helping us see how we can navigate this leadership careers in the age of AI. And a huge thank you to our audience for staying engaged and opening it up to any questions you might have in the chat. So I can't see the chat right now. So Jasmine or somebody, if you can pick out any questions, or feel free to open up your mic and ask those questions.
I had a quick question. So, can you hear me?
Yes. Please go ahead.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much for your talk. I wanted to discuss one point where you said that diverse opinions are very important going forward in the age of AI. And while I agree with it, I've often seen that at work, the opinion of like the highest paid person matters the most. So, how do we reconcile with this discrepancy where somebody who's been in the company longer or is more senior or is paid a lot more has a different idea than you? Then how do you convince them to
So I
think?
will
Yeah.
say that this is changing a little bit with Gen AI. Like even the highest paid people are realizing that they need to hire fresh talent in the space. And if they don't listen, then they will fall behind, whereas the other companies will move ahead or the startups will move ahead. The startups will come and, solve the problem that you're trying to solve. So I'm not saying it's like completely solved, but at least it's something they are thinking about. So I would say that that direction is opening up a little bit. But then you could say like, how does like even a, the most junior person might have an idea that can have an impact. How does that bubble up into, the roadmap of things we are planning to do? And for that, I very strongly encourage like a healthy balance between top down and bottoms up. One way to do it is like the 20% projects that I said, where the idea is that people do projects. The ideas are their own. They're still aligned to product, but the ideas are their own. They have not been given top down. Another way to, I have encouraged it in the past, even pre-Gen AI, is everybody in the team actually writes down their ideas, and we create a Confluence page with what can you do with the product, what are the and then we take that a collation of those ideas, and we have like an internal discussion to figure out which are most doable, which are most achievable. Because from engineering, if you go and tell the rest of the company that we want to do this, we better know how to do it. And then bring it up to product, bring it up to business, and some ideas from that also typically get put in the roadmap. So there are processes, I would say, to bring everybody's idea in. And I definitely would say the industry is going in a direction where people definitely want to listen to fresh things right now to innovate within their product.
Thank you.
I think there's another question in the chat.
Yeah, it's do you want to read it or?
So the question is, as generative AI evolves, what can organizations do to help their workforce upskill and ensure teams are ready to adopt and apply Gen AI tools effectively?
Yeah, this is a really good question. And this is a question that we think about every day because we are moving from this era of having only ML AI teams to the era of saying that all teams are Gen AI teams. That is, even if you don't have a machine learning person in the team, they could still have a solution that is, that is powered by Gen AI. Now, in order to do that, there's definitely a lot of upskilling required. There is upskilling required in understanding quality, responsible AI, and all of these have courses. And I would say like one way to go about it is make sure that your engineers, like software engineers, product managers, actually do the required courses. But also, if you do courses in isolation, you're actually going to forget the content. Like, why are you even doing it? So do courses that are like relevant to the projects you're trying to solve and bring that in to your day to day. But one of the things that most companies are trying to do is at least have a requirement for, these are the courses you have to do to like just remain in the Gen AI team. And that's definitely a good start. The other is, I would say, heavy collaboration with AI ML teams with other teams. That also leads to a lot of knowledge spreading around.
Thank you. Thank you, Sanghamitra. So if there are any other questions, please post it to her. You can connect with her on LinkedIn and ask her, get her advice or ask her more questions. With that, I will hand off to Madhuram, who will introduce our next speaker. So thanks once again, Sanghamitra, for being
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I've come back to this forum many times and I really enjoy
We
speaking.
always enjoy having you here. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Nishrin, and thanks so much, Sanghamitra, for the wonderful discussion on Gen AI and how organizations and leaders can adopt it. Our next speaker is Dr. Matilde. Dr. Matilde D'Amelio is the CEO and founder of Sophia, with nearly 15 years of experience in AI digital transformation and data strategy. She has partnered with global organizations like Heineken, Bloomberg, Toyota, and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, advising on AI, machine learning, and data driven decision making. She collaborates with top institutions including MIT, Harvard, UC Berkeley, Columbia, Cambridge, Stanford, Imperial College, Kellogg, and ISB, delivering executive education focused on AI applications, machine learning, and data driven innovation. Her work empowers professionals and businesses to leverage AI for strategic growth and operational efficiency. Beyond consulting, she serves as an advisory board member for think tanks and organizations worldwide, offering strategic guidance on AI adoption, data driven decision making, and digital transformation initiatives. With this, I welcome Dr. Matilde.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for having me. Let me share my slide. Give me 1 second. Oops. Can you see them?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so thank you very much for the introduction. So when I was asked what to discuss today, I thought carefully about it. And at the end, I came out with this topic, which is about synthetic data. Just because I feel that this is quite an important topic today. And I'm very pleased about the discussion that has just been finished, because a lot of focus at the moment is around generative AI. A lot of companies at the moment are focusing around the adoption, piloting, or scaling of generative AI solution. But very little is known about the use of synthetic data, which is actually a very important pillar nowadays when it comes to the adoption of generative AI. So just also to clarify before we go a little bit into the discussion in terms of how these data are used, what are the opportunities, what are the challenges, what is the status of the art, I just want you to very briefly introduce and clarify to everyone what I mean when I'm talking about synthetic data. So synthetic data, they are fake data, right? If you wanted to put in a simple way, they are data which are created in an artificial way, which try to replicate as much as possible the behavior, the relationship, the statistical properties of the original data. We're going to see that there are different ways for creating this synthetic data, but I think what is very important also to clarify is that a lot of people, when they think about synthetic data, most of the time they think about structured data, tabular data, numeric data. This is actually a very, very tiny part of the amount of synthetic data which at the moment is created and used when it comes to AI solutions, especially generative AI solutions. Majority of the synthetic data which at the moment are used, they are semi-structured, or most likely they are unstructured. So everything which is like audios, text, videos, this is really where the biggest application and opportunity of synthetic data sits at the moment. Now, when it comes to the creation of synthetic data, this is the systematic use of synthetic data has started really long time ago. And for some time, traditional machine learning techniques, right, were used for the creation of this synthetic data. Among the most popular one, we had random sampling, decision tree, random forest, Bayesian optimization techniques. But then over time, because the type, the quality and the quantity of synthetic data started to increase and became more and more complex, what we started to see is that over time, more and more complex algorithms have been used by organizations to create this synthetic data. GAN, Generative Adversarial Network, which is a typology of reinforcement learning, just to put a little bit things in perspective, has been one of the most widely used technique for using synthetic data, at least in the last 4 to 5 years. And then in the last 3 years, what we've seen is an increase of diffusion models, autoencoder solution, and now only for text generation, also of large language models. So as you can see, the technique started by more traditional machine learning technique and then evolved into reinforcement learning technique with the GAN, and then they moved into more like deep learning neural network techniques, which is like diffusion models, variational autoencoders, large language models. Again, why? Because the quantity of synthetic data they have to be produced, but also the variety of synthetic data they have to be produced has increased dramatically, I would say, in the last 3 to 4 years. So we see as well an evolution. Now, where the market is going at the moment is even a further development of how these data are going to be created, which is agentic solution. I know everyone is talking about agent AI. I think is the buzzword of the moment, but this is one of the first application where we already started to see agentic solution which are applied, especially in situation in two types of scenarios. One type of scenario where the creation of synthetic data is a repetitive business, right? So it can be kind of automatized. This is where we started to see already the use of agentic data. And then the second scenario, which is more complex, is the situation where in reality, collecting real-time data, it does become extremely difficult. Space, it's one of the examples where we see. So, for example, one of the areas where we see quite a lot of agentic AI solutions, which are in the experimental phase, it's when it comes to elaborating and processing data coming from the rovers, which at the moment are on Mars, like the small robot, which are on Mars planet, which are collecting data. And so that is one of the cases where we see already at the moment quite a lot of piloting going on how agentic solution can be used, just because that is one of that application where getting real-time data is extremely challenging. It's never real-time. We always have a delay, but also the quality and the data collection is extremely difficult. So we're really, really struggling to have data there that measure what's going on Mars, what is the status, for example, of the different materials, if there is any presence of water. And this is why, well, we started to see the use of agentic AI solution for the creation of synthetic data, which they're trying to basically rebuild as much as possible and as accurate as possible what's going on planet Mars. So this is just to let you know that, this is a very, very broad application at the moment in the world of AI. There are different techniques which have been used at different applications, and this is a field which is keeping evolving and changing at a very, very fast pace. But now let me take a little bit of a step back. Now that I've clarified what is synthetic data, how this synthetic data can be created, I wanted to answer to the question of why, right? So why companies need synthetic data? There are a number of reasons, and some of them I agree with, and some other I didn't agree with. So what I did here is that I only put the reasons which I agree with, right? Because there's a lot of noise into the market, and some information, in my opinion, are not correct. The first thing, which is the key, in my opinion, is data scarcity. We've been hearing before that at the moment the true focus from a marketing perspective and also within industry is generative AI, and that's true. The problem of generative AI, let me take a step back. The problems of the few foundation models of generative AI which are in the market is that the performances of those models, they tend to deteriorate. So let's take the example, the most popular one, OpenAI, Anthropic, Claude is one of the applications of the Anthropic. ChatGPT is one of the commercial products of OpenAI. We have Llama 4 from Meta. We have Mistral. We have DeepSeek. So on DeepSeek, we don't know, but on all the other models, what we know is that over a period of 6 to 8 months, the performances of those models tends to deteriorate. Now, what does it mean? Is that these models, in order to not only increase performances, but also maintain the same level of performances, they need to be retrained regularly. This is a massive, massive, massive effort in terms of data requirement. Now, at the beginning, the training of those models was pretty straightforward because what these companies did is that they did a web scraping, right? So they collected information from the web. It was first, no one had never done it on such a scale. So the data availability was extremely high. But now, for a number of reasons, which we're going to see in a moment, the data availability has become more and more problematic. So data scarcity is the first reason why synthetic data have become a key pillar, especially for big tech company, which needs to continuously, retrain their models. The second element, which is always pitched in a wrong way, which is bias reduction, it's actually a more technical reason and a statistical reason. And it sits on the fact that we tend to believe that because these large language models, they have a lot of data, and we're talking about data in the order of millions, they necessarily, by definition, they're going to be balanced, right? Which means that they're going to have an equal representation of all sorts of diversity, right? Which is represented in our countries, in the different regions, in the different languages. Well, that's not the case. That's absolutely not the case. Despite the fact that these databases are unprecedentedly big, they are extremely unbalanced. They have strong intrinsic biases. These intrinsic biases, they come from a number of reasons, but two main reasons. The first reason is that there are biases in the society, right? And these are naturally reflected in the data. But the second reason is that when these models that were trained, they were not all the data were collected in equal share from different parts of the world for a number of reasons, which can be regulation, which can be political reason, which can be computational power availability. So what happened is that these models have been trained on extremely unbalanced data set. Now, synthetic data, it can be kind of an effective way to try to create more balance between the different data sets. So what you do is that you have, the least represented data, and you use synthetic data to increase the representation. Of course, this led to my third point, which is this is really one of the key pillars to make AI development faster. Right? But also not only in the training phase, but we're going to see in a little one also in the deployment phase. And because all the companies at the moment, they have stakeholders, shareholders, which are asking for implementing AI solution, having synthetic data, it does become kind of a quick way to try to get through it and try to implement and adopt AI solution quicker. And last but not least is what I was mentioning before when I was citing the case of Mars. There are cases which are called edge cases where in reality collecting real data, it's not so simple. It does become pretty difficult. Again, the case of Mars is one, but another case is about weather, or it's about financial markets. So those are the cases where using synthetic data can be used as a stress test, right, to really assess the robustness of your data. Let's also summarize, so exactly where do we need, so those were the why, right? So why do we need synthetic data? And now let's go a step further and discuss about where exactly we need. So if you're a company which is involved in any way in any generative AI solution, where do you need it? The first is, of course, in the providers of foundation model. So again, Google, if you think about Anthropic, OpenAI / Microsoft, Mistral, DeepSeek, right? Those are the companies that need data, synthetic data. Again, why? Because they need to constantly retrain the model. The data availability is becoming more and more problematic, but also there is an increasing amount of lawsuits coming from all parts of the world at the moment because of copyright infringement, because of biases in the model. So what these companies which provide foundations model are doing is that they are using synthetic data to try to overcome this data scarcity, but also these legal problems which are raising quite significantly with the use of generative AI solution. The second pillar, which is what we don't discuss about, is the use of synthetic data by companies that are actually implementing generative AI solutions. Not the one that developed the foundation models, but like the end users. I'm thinking about, Toyota, Heineken, Bloomberg. Bloomberg is a little bit different, but Toyota, Heineken, Goldman Sachs or whatever. So whatever company take a foundation model and implement it in-house, most of the time they need to use synthetic data. Why? Because in reality, these foundation models, as they are very generalistic models. They need to be personalized through techniques which can be RAG or they can be fine-tuned. Whatever the companies decided to do for the personalization, most of the time they will struggle to have the right amount and quality of data for really personalize this model to the degree that it will justify the investment. this is a huge barrier for organization. We come from the AI winter. In the previous session as well, it was mentioned that 10 years ago it was all about machine learning and about big data. But the truth is that the adoption of machine learning, it was not as fast as the market predicted because of the data problem. Now here in the generative AI wave, we are in a similar scenario. However, companies now, they have discovered the power of synthetic data. And they basically, what a lot of companies are doing is that they're not anymore involved in massive data integration, data cleaning, data preparation, which are very lengthy and very costly. They build a pilot and then they use synthetic data for scaling the pilot and for personalizing the models at a much quicker rate. So this is one of the biggest application and one of the biggest growing area in terms of adoption of synthetic data. What are the risks, however? This type of solution, they don't come without any sorts of risks. The first one is, despite what is presented most of the time, synthetic data, they don't mitigate biases. They actually increase biases, right? It's also for a statistical reason, because the synthetic data, they don't capture elements that were not captured by the previous data. They simply take the small sample and they replicate it, right? By repeating the same behavior, by repeating the same relationship. They actually add quantity, they don't add quality. They don't add an additional piece of information. So if the model is biased, the bias is going to be even stronger. So this is something which is very important to bear in mind. The second one, it's something that I will take it on. Let me go to the third one. The third one is increase of hallucination and lack of transparency. This is one of the biggest question mark in the generative AI world. Majority of those models, they're not transparent. Some model is more transparent than others, but there's a huge chunk of generative AI models, which are proprietary models, which are not transparent. Using synthetic data and don't make the database of synthetic data public available is even increasing the lack of transparency in these models. Also, I don't know if you heard, but a couple of days ago, both OpenAI and Anthropic released a statement saying that both Claude Sonnet and ChatGPT, they are increasing in terms of hallucination, and they don't know why. But if you read some technical articles, one of the reasons that some technical expert is mentioning is the extremely heavy use of synthetic data in the last version of Claude Sonnet and ChatGPT. Right? So it looks like that the synthetic data can be also one of the reasons why this model now, they are dramatically increasing in the level of hallucination, which is one of the biggest problems then when it comes to adopting generative AI solution in any business environment. The third challenge is what is in the middle, and it's something which is particularly dear to me, which is copyright infringement. This has been always like a controversial point when it comes to generative AI solution, both in the training phase and in the adoption phase. In the training phase, we had so many scandals, and I'm going to mention it later on, about the fact that a lot of data were used for training those models. But then also we started to see quite a lot of lawsuits in the deployment phase, where a lot of companies are starting to claim that the provider of this foundation model, they're actually using their own data for retraining the model. So copyright infringement is a big point. And synthetic data for a period of time was positioned in a way where it was said, oh, but we're going to get synthetic data, and this is basically reducing any problem in terms of copyright infringement. Well, now the regulation around the world, they are tackling these problems, and more regulation around the world, they are mentioning that if you use synthetic data, so your synthetic data, they're going to be generated by using data that were protected by copyright and that were illegally taken, going against any copyright regulation. So this means that as well, your synthetic data, they are an infringement of the copyright regulation. Right? So it does not matter that these are synthetic, but the synthetic data, they were generated by data for which the collection represented an infringement of the copyright. So automatically also the synthetic data, it will represent an infringement of the copyright. So as of now, the regulation was really gray. We didn't have much information, but now a lot of regulations around the world, they're really, really going in that direction to clarify that also, synthetic data, they do represent a risk of copyright infringement. So these at the moment, they do represent the three big risks. One is ethical, one is legal, and one is more technical. But they do represent three big points which are heavily discussed at the moment. I just wanted to briefly mention how big is the discussion around the copyright at the moment, just because when it comes to synthetic data, in my opinion, this is the number one priority at the moment. It's where we see most of the attention. In 2024, we see a record number of AI-related lawsuits around the world, including in the US. And majority of these lawsuits, they were really linked as well to the use of synthetic data and the generation of synthetic data. One of the most recent case, I don't know if you read about it or if you're familiar with it, is that, I think it was in February or March, I don't remember, I think yes, it was March, ChatGPT released a new version for image generation, which was much more accurate than the previous version. Now, when you were basically creating an image with ChatGPT, the new function, you clearly were creating images which were like a copy-paste of the images generated by the Ghibli studio. I don't know if anyone knows the Ghibli studio, anyone is familiar with anime, mangas, but it's the most famous studio in the world, right, when it comes to the production of any sorts of anime or manga. It's extremely well known, and it became quite obvious that in this case, ChatGPT was trained not only in the original data, but in the synthetic data by taking into account millions and millions of images which have been produced by the Ghibli studios in the last 15 years of operation. So this became one of the most, obvious case of copyright infringement. And it was, also the Ghibli studio was really, really vocal about it. And now it's also taking legal action against, OpenAI. But now, what are the solutions here, right? Because the use of synthetic data is not going away, right? It's a structural a necessity, not only for the provider of foundation models, but also for the businesses which are adopting generative AI solutions. So what are the solutions here? First one, I would say licensing deals. That is extremely important. We see, I put it here, I think, yes, one article. So we see an increasing amount of licensing deals going on. Some famous one is Vogue, Condé Nast, for those of you which are familiar with it, or New Cops, which is a big group, a big conglomerate that includes big names. For example, I think the Washington Post is there, the Daily Telegraph, the Wall Street Journal. So really, really, really big name. So what these companies did is that they made an agreement with provider of foundation model in order to allow to these companies to access their own archive and their own data center. So what happened is that now they have an agreement, which I think is like 20 years long. So for 20 years, companies such as Anthropic or OpenAI or Meta can access the archive and train their own models. So this is definitely one direction to go to solve one of the key problems also in the synthetic data landscape. The other one, let me go there, it's about governance in the training and adoption. And this is a very important pillar when it comes to transparency. I'm European, so you will see I have a bias, which is I'm a real big supporter of transparency and regulation. And one of the key elements from a business point of view to really have a clear governance is to introduce what are called the model cards. whatever you are, a provider of foundation model, or whatever you are a business which is adopting generative AI, building and making public model cards is extremely important. Why? Because in the model cards, what you do is that you clearly present what data you have used, what sorts of data manipulation you had, how did you use synthetic data, how did you create synthetic data, and then you go as well in one section when you explain what are the limitations. So model cards, they are a must, I have to say, nowadays to go into the direction of having this responsible AI that was also discussed in the previous section. The third pillar is having more government regulation. It's very, very important to have a clear cut regulation that define how this model can be trained, how this model can be adopted, and what is the use of data. Different countries, they've already started to move in that direction. I'm from Europe. I'm based in London. So the European Union was actually the first region in the world that delivered in August of 2024 a comprehensive regulation, which is called the AI Act, which tackle AI from a risk perspective and see in the data and in the synthetic data a huge risk. So basically what the AI Act does is that it creates a number of risk controlling initiatives that have to be put in place by organizations that are training the models, but also that are adopting generative AI solutions. The US so far was not making many actions, but I'm very pleased that actually is a breaking news of yesterday, I think, where we saw for the first time what looks like is going to be the final version of the copyright infringement report. So it's called Copyright and Artificial Intelligence Report. And what this what this lawsuit is going to do, what this regulation is going to do is that it's going to regulate every element in terms of data use and data creation, in terms of what is happening for protecting the copyrights. The good news is that this regulation is going to be in favor of content creators and copyright creators. So which means that again, if put under the umbrella of synthetic data, we can only use synthetic data by using data that were collected in the respect of the copyright, but also any profit that is going to be generated by the use of synthetic data needs to be cascaded back in some sort of revenue share or revenue generation to the original content creator or to the copyright holders. Right? So this is a very good news. The US government has not approved it yet. We are in the third and looks like it's going to be the final version, but hopefully by the summer, this will become law in the US, which is a first, right? Which is very, very good in the direction of protecting data and copyrights. And yes, let me say one more thing. Last more thing. It's about all the generative. All the generative AI debate at the moment sits in a very, very critical phase. The true conflict that is happening in generative AI world is between open source and closed source proprietary solution. I'm a big supporter of open source, right, models for a number of reasons. But the first reason is because they are open and they are transparent. This is one of the best ways to tackle all these risks that come from the use of synthetic data. Using open source model, it really allows you to understand what data they've been trained, how they've been created, and also understand really what are the limitations of this model. And so you as a business, you can better identify what are the actual implementation and adoption that you can have in your organization, but also what are the risk elements that may come from it and any sort of risk management strategy that have to be put in place. So as you can see, this is quite an important topic at the moment in the generative AI world. And I hope, it will give you a little bit of an understanding of where we are at the moment with this field and what are the challenges that the future is posing at the moment. But very exciting time ahead of us. So thank you very much for listening. I hope, yes, I was not late, so I'm perfectly on time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Matilda. That was definitely a very insightful and informative presentation on how regulations are coming up and what generative AI is heading towards with respect to synthetic data and user privacy. So I have a follow-up question on what you just presented. So, in your view, what are some privacy preserving techniques that organizations can take even before laws and regulations can come up? And what are some of the most promising techniques that organizations have already taken up for protecting users while still enabling, the functionality and the creativity of generative AI? For instance, if like you showed the artwork that definitely went kind of spread out throughout the internet, can these organizations pay users, tell users that we would be using your images to train our model, pay users for that data? So what are some of the techniques that organizations can take and have already taken up to preserve functionality and the privacy?
Yeah, so for me there are two levels. So if you as a business, if you wanted to prevent the privacy of your own internal data, there is only one way to do it with 100% security, which is using open source. Right? There is no other way that you can better secure your data. You take open source model, you download your open source model, you run, and you have the open source model running in your own cloud solution, right? Which means that you are basically having a closed system. When the new version of our open source model is going to be released, then what is happening is that, like as we did in the past with Microsoft Office package, a new version is released, you do the update, and then you update the model. From a business perspective, that is the most secure way, right? So you don't have all the risk of having your data to be stolen and used for training the model. A lot of proprietary model, I'm giving the example of Microsoft or OpenAI. These are the typical proprietary model. In the terms and conditions, they say that then the data that you feed into the model when you are rolling and using, they're not going to be used for training. However, I need to be very transparent because, for example, the European Union is investigating it because they don't believe this claim is true. So European Union started already 6 months ago with the antitrust authority to do an investigation to really claim if this is true. Because they already proved that companies such as Microsoft, they have violated multiple times the GDPR, which is a very essential pillar in the European Union for the data protection. So, and they've already received quite a lot of fine, like multi-million fine. I think the biggest fine that they received was for Apple, and it was 100 millions, and it was for GDPR infringement. So these big companies, they come from a history where they break these laws. So that's why now the European Union authorities, they are really investigating if these terms and conditions, they are really true. That's why my answer to businesses is always go open source. That's the. Now, from like a user perspective, let's say that you have, your company is, you're a marketing company. For example, you're a marketing agency, and you have a number of freelancers which have been working for you, and you wanted to use the work of these freelancers for your for training your model, or you're an educational company, a training company, and you have a number of instructors, for example, that have prepared material, right? And you use this material into the training and then into the commercialization. So there are different techniques there. One of the most popular is watermark. So what do is that you track. So from the beginning, you track what is the source of the data, and all the data has been used throughout the entire process, also in the creation of synthetic data. So you map out the entire flow of the data, and then you pay some sorts of monthly, weekly, yearly fee back to the owner of the content. That is one of the most adopted techniques. So, for example, companies such as Adobe, or get the image, they've already started to implement this technique because they rely massively on freelancers that are creating images or data content. So they're using watermarking and also a revenue share system to pay back some sorts of revenues to the image or content creators. Yes, I hope I answered the question.
Yes, you did, and thanks so much, Dr. Matilda. And if there are any other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and Dr. Matilda will be able to answer your questions in the chat. So we can head over to the next speaker in the session. Thanks so much, Dr. Matilda.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the next speaker of the session is Saranya Krishnamoorthy. Saranya Krishnamoorthy is an NLP/ML advisor who has been at the forefront of applying artificial intelligence to revolutionize healthcare for over 15 years. Holding a master's degree in computer science with a specialization in bioinformatics, Saranya's expertise is underscored by publications in esteemed journals such as JHIR and presentations at leading conferences, including NAACL, Clinical NLP, RANLP. Throughout her career, Saranya has focused on developing and implementing impactful solutions aimed at enhancing patient outcomes, improving operational efficiency, and driving advancements in medical research. So, with this, I will hand over to Saranya.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Saranya, we can hear you.
And can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. After those two insightful talks on carving out our AI empire and keeping our AI well behaved, let's pivot to a field where AI is getting deeply personal. I mean, literally, we are going to talk about healthcare. Hopefully, I won't make your morning session boring. Let's see. Imagine an invisible enemy lurking in your hospitals, silently claiming lives every day. This enemy doesn't discriminate. It strikes the young, the old, the healthy, and the vulnerable all alike. I'm talking about sepsis, a condition where every hour of delayed diagnosis dramatically increases the risk of death. Now think about the last science fiction movie you watched it. It likely featured advanced medical technology, perhaps even intelligent systems, diagnosing and treating patients with precision. What if I told you that the line between science fiction and reality in healthcare is blurring faster? What if we had a silent guardian, a tireless intelligence capable of detecting the subtle signals of enemies like sepsis hours before even they become obvious to the human eye? This is not just a futuristic dream. This is the power of AI today. It is becoming a powerful weapon in the fight against silent killers like sepsis, transforming healthcare as we know it. Let's explore how AI is transforming the way we diagnose diseases, develop new treatments, and personalize patient care, thereby saving lives in ways we only imagined before. With that note, let's quickly dive into the topic. First, I'll discuss on the challenges of healthcare data. Next, we'll explore on how AI has been transforming healthcare. Then we'll delve into AI's key applications in the field. Finally, I'll touch upon the crucial topic, which is ethical AI. Before we dive into the solutions, it's important to appreciate the unique challenges we face when dealing with healthcare data. Let's break down these challenges. Imagine trying to piece together puzzle where the pieces are all of different shapes, sizes, and even come from different places. That's often what it feels like in healthcare. We are dealing with immense heterogeneity, everything from doctors' free notes to structured databases. This information is often trapped in silos, residing in different systems and institutions that don't easily communicate with each other. We are also still grappling with legacy technologies like the fax machine, which impedes seamless data flow. The challenge of multimodality is significant. How do we bring together and understand text alongside medical images, genomic sequences, and data from wearable devices? Then there's an interesting challenge of a patient's healthcare journey being long and complex temporal sequence with the data points scattered over time. This makes it challenging to piece together a comprehensive and continuous picture of a patient healthcare status. These inherent complexities create significant hurdle for anyone trying to understand and extract meaningful insights from these healthcare data. As data scientists, you understand the immense power of AI. AI is essentially about thinking like a human at a big scale. The evolution of AI can be categorized into 3 generations. First generation was all logic-based system, basically if-then rules. Then there came the second generation, which had mathematical pattern recognition, similar to a weatherman prediction. Then the third generation came in, which is basically machines that can understand and process natural language. It's not just about automation, but about creating intelligent systems. This slide visually represents 3 key areas. AI, which is artificial intelligence, providing the foundation for modeling and optimizing healthcare process. Then there's NLP, which unlocks the vast potential of unstructured medical texts from patient records to research papers. Then the Gen AI, which is opening entirely new possibilities, from designing novel drugs to generating synthetic data for enhanced AI training. Consider the vast ocean of data within the healthcare: medical records, images, research papers, scientific journals. AI isn't just about automating tasks within this ocean. It's about providing the intelligence to navigate it and extract meaningful insights that were previously hidden. These interconnected fields are driving a revolution in healthcare. As we delve into the transformative impact of AI in healthcare, I'm here to introduce 4 key applications where AI is making significant strides. First is predictive diagnostics and stratification, where it helps us to anticipate health issues before they become critical, enabling proactive healthcare. AI-powered medical imaging is modernizing how we interpret medical scans, enhancing both accuracy and efficiency in diagnosis. Then there's hospital operational efficiency and workflow optimization. It's another crucial area where AI streamlines processes, saving valuable time and resources. Lastly, we have enhanced CDR, which is clinical decision making, which leverages NLP to support healthcare professionals in making more informed and effective decisions. In the following slide, we'll explore into each area in detail. Our first focus is predictive diagnostics and risk stratification. Imagine AI's power to look into the future of a patient health by analyzing massive amounts of data from patient history, genetic information, to subtle changes in medical images. We can forecast potential health issues before even they fully emerge. Think about it. Convolutional neural networks, CNNs, can already spot early signs of cardiovascular risk in something as simple as a retinal scan, often before any symptoms even appear. Now, traditionally, our insights were limited to neatly organized structured data, but NLP has blown the doors wide open. It allows us to tap into the vast, often messy world of unstructured clinical text. Think like doctor's notes, discharge summaries. Through techniques like named entity recognition, NER, relationship extraction, or topic modeling, we can pull out the crucial details, understand the connections between them, and grasp the real meaning within these narratives. When we feed the rich textual data into sophisticated AI algorithms such as RNNs and transformers, something remarkable happens. They can uncover subtle patterns and risk indicators that traditional statistical methods couldn't see it before. The result is proactive and truly personalized care. AI algorithms can flag individuals at risk before a condition fully develops. Consider IBM Watson Health. They are already leveraging the power of AI and NLP to help doctors make more informed treatment decisions and identify patients who would benefit from those interventions. This isn't just theory, it's a real world example of how AI and NLP are tangibly transforming healthcare, paving the way for earlier diagnosis, more effective treatments, and a healthier future to all. AI has been greatly aiding how we visualize the human body in medicine, offering us unprecedented insights. First, enhances detection. Algorithms can meticulously analyze images like mammograms, often spot subtle signals of diseases like breast cancer earlier and with a greater accuracy. Importantly, AI empowers but doesn't replace our expert radiologist. Secondly, it accelerates analysis. By automating routine tasks like organ segmentation in scans, it frees up radiologists' valuable time to focus on more complex cases, ensuring quicker and accurate results in patients. Furthermore, AI enables personalized insights by connecting images with patients' data. For instance, analyzing a cardiac MRI along with the patient history can predict their specific risk of future heart problems, leading to more tailored and effective treatments. This integrated approach provides a deeper understanding for each patient. Overall, it significantly improves medical image analysis, enhancing accuracy across modalities like MRIs, CT, X-rays, resulting in more reliable reports. It also reduces human error by minimizing inconsistency in interpretation, leading to more dependable diagnosis. In essence, AI in medical imaging is about more than just better pictures. It's about earlier and more accurate prediction and diagnosis, faster workflows for our medical professionals, and ultimately more personalized and improved care for every patient. It's about seeing more, understanding better, and acting faster, with AI serving as a partner with the radiologist. Okay, let's look at this slide. AI is the key to streamlining healthcare operations. Think about Intermountain Healthcare using AI to slash no-show rates with the smart reminders, or Johns Hopkins Hospital. It's using AI as an intelligent air traffic controller for patient flow, reducing wait times. AI also provides crucial foresights like DeepMind systems predicting patients' decline, allowing for earlier, more efficient intervention. And for the often invisible but crucial back office companies like Olive are automating the tasks already, freeing up resources. Crucially, AI is even transforming digital documentation. Recently, the solutions like Microsoft's Dragon, which is basically Nuance one, listens to patients' encounter and automatically generates notes, directly combating physicians' burnout and improving recorded accuracy. The results are very clear: lower cost, happier staff who can focus on care and ultimately better experience for our patients. It isn't just marginal improvement, it's fundamentally streamlining how healthcare used to work. Next comes the fun part where my interest lies in. The idea is to extract meaningful information from the rich yet often structured data found in doctor's notes. The doctor's notes usually contain crucial information about patient history, symptoms, diagnosis, treatment plans, and clinical reasoning, often more nuanced than the structured data. Difficulty to systematically analyze and extract insights using traditional methods, leading to underutilization of valuable information present in this big doctor's notes. NLP techniques are the rescuers, enabling computers to understand, interpret, and extract meaningful information from these free text narratives. This isn't just about keyword searching. It's about leveraging the power of natural language processing and cutting-edge techniques like Gen AI to truly understand the doctor's narratives. Let's see some key capabilities and practical applications of the NLP techniques. Our focus will be on the key capabilities like mapping terms to standard ontologies for deeper understanding, extracting crucial relationships between diseases, treatments, symptoms, and practical applications of highlighting evidences to empower clinicians at point of care, like summarizing, those kind of stuff. Okay, I'll give an example. This slide depicts a common medical scenario, a patient experiencing a migraine. The image vividly illustrates the throbbing pain characteristic of a migraine, and it mentions sumatriptan, a medication used to treat this condition, while also noting a potential side effect of this medication, which is drowsiness. Now, imagine this information is embedded within a giant doctor's notes. Extracting this information efficiently and accurately is a significant challenge. It's like searching a needle in the haystack. This is why NLP steps in. You see, a fundamental step is truly understanding a doctor's notes is to move beyond simply recognizing individual words. We need to grasp the meaning of those words in their context and crucially identify the relationship between them. NLP provides several key strategies like named entity recognition, which I mentioned before. Think about this as a process of identifying the key players in a medical narrative. In a note about this migraine patient, NER would automatically recognize migraine as a disease, throbbing pain as a symptom, and sumatriptan as a medication. It's like AI picking out the crucial details. Then there's one more called named entity linking, where we connect these to standard ontologies. Currently, the medical ontologies are UMLS, NOMED, CT, those kind of ontologies. Finally, there's relationship extraction. That is, this goes a step further. It is not about just identifying the entities, tagging it to the ontology. We need to know how they interact with each other, identifying the connections between them. For example, it tells that sumatriptan is used to treat migraine, but unfortunately, it can cause drowsiness. So that's the relationship between these entities. Then there is a temporal information extraction, which is the sequence of events is often critical. When did the migraine start? When was the sumatriptan prescribed? Understanding the timeline is essential for tracking a patient's progress and the effectiveness of intervention. Then there comes sentiment analysis. Doctor's notes also contain valuable information about a patient's experience. Is a patient responding well to a treatment, or they experiencing a negative effects or expressing concerns? Sentiment analysis allows us to extract these subjective details. Clinical concept extraction and encoding. This is where we ensure that everyone is speaking the same language. Doctors might use a different terms, abbreviation, but we need to standardize everything to represent a common clinical information. This is also used when they submit for medical claims and stuff. Next, we are going to talk about AI summarization. AI summarization is transforming the way we process and understand medical information, offering significant benefits for both doctors and insurance companies. Imagine the challenge. Doctors often face a deluge of patient data, from lengthy conversation notes to complex medical history. Similarly, insurers grapple with vast amount of documentation when processing the claims. AI summarization provides a powerful solution. Here's how it works. Unlike simple text extraction, it uses abstractive summarization. This means it doesn't pull out snippets like evidence extraction. It generates new and concise text that captures the core meaning of the original document. This is made possible by advanced technologies like transformer models, attention mechanism, and so on. These models enables the AI to analyze the context of the text, understand the relationship between different pieces of information, and then create a coherent and much stronger summary. Shorter summary. For doctors, the impact is substantial. AI summarization allows them to rapidly review patient history. Instead of spending valuable time wading through pages and pages of notes, they can quickly grasp the essential details like what is the diagnosis, what is the treatment, what kind of medication the patient took, and generally what key events did it happen. This leads to a significant reduction in administrative burden, freeing up their time to focus on what matters the most, that is patient care. The benefits extend to insurance companies as well. AI-based evidence highlighting summarization enables doctors to focus the attention to the right data, thereby if they can do efficient claims processing. By providing a clear and concise summary of the relevant medical information, it can help in accuracy and thereby leading to fewer denials. This streamlines the entire process, reducing operational costs and efficient turnaround times. This acts as a bridge, condensing complex medical information into a format that is easily digestible and actionable. Next, I'd like to touch upon some of the LLMs making waves in healthcare. This won't be an exhaustive list, but I would highlight some key examples. While generally LLMs like OpenAI's ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, and Claude possesses a degree of medical understanding, the models will focus on specifically designed or fine-tuned for healthcare applications. At the top, we see MedPalm and MedPalm 2, which is such as basically from Google. They are engineered for high accuracy in complex medical question answering, showcasing AI's potential as a reliable information source for clinicians, for medical researchers, so on. Radiology GPT demonstrates the power of task-specific AI in radiology, aiding in detailed image analysis and potentially improving diagnostic workflows. And then there's Clinical Bird, BioBird, UMLS Bird, so on, which excel in biomedical text mining, extracting crucial information and relationship from vast amount of medical literature and clinical notes. These specialized models are often crucial for achieving peak performances and addressing nuanced requirements within their specific domains. Then there is versatile models like BioMed-LM or GeneGPT. These represent a growing trend towards AI with broader capabilities, kind of like expert in many. So their strength lies in the ability to potentially transfer knowledge between different tasks and adapt more readily to new challenges within the healthcare ecosystem. These solutions foster a more holistic understanding of biological and clinical concepts, basically. Okay. Now, so far we've been seeing what magic AI has been doing into healthcare, and integration of AI into healthcare basically holds a great promise. But it demands strong ethical foundation, which Sophia also touched upon a bit from the outset. We must proactively address key concerns to ensure this technology benefits all patients fairly and responsibly. First, the privacy and security. PHI is a top priority. We need a top-notch encryption and strict access controls to keep this sensitive data safe and sound. Make sure the model follows HIPAA standards, and making sure security measures to protect patient data, including data de-identification, secured storage and transmissions, access controls, regular risk assessments, and so on. Next is fairness and equity. They both are non-negotiable. We work on we got to work on diverse data sets and develop smart ways to spot and reduce bias in AI algorithms. This is a key to making sure AI solutions are fair for everyone, no matter their background, transparency, and trust. The field of explainable AI or HAI is booming. This research is all about making AI decisions crystal clear, which is essentially building trust with healthcare providers and patients. Lastly, accountability and oversight are a must. We need to evolving guidelines and ongoing regulatory discussions to ensure AI in healthcare is governed responsibly. These efforts are vital in maintaining high standards and using AI ethically and effectively. In a nutshell, building the ethical framework isn't just important, it is essential. By tackling these key areas, we can make sure AI in healthcare serves humanity's best interest and provides fair access healthcare for everyone. We have been seeing AI's magic bringing incredible potential, but there's a critical ethical challenge we can't ignore, which is basically bias. AI models learn from data, and if the data reflects societal inequalities like the underrepresentation of certain groups or historical biases, the AI will not only perpetuate these biases but could even amplify them. Imagine an AI system under diagnosing a condition in a specific group because it wasn't trained on enough diverse data, or a risk algorithm unfairly flagging certain populations. These scenarios aren't just theoretical, these consequences are very real. Unequal care, widened health disparities, and eroded patients' trust. We must acknowledge and tackle these challenges head on. Ensuring our AI systems were trained on diverse, representative datasets and developing methods to detect and mitigate bias is very crucial. By doing so, we can harness the full potential of AI in healthcare while promoting fairness and equity to all patients. How do we ensure AI in healthcare is fair and trustworthy? My recent analysis, and I've been reading more on that, the answer is explainable AI. HAI, we call it. HAI focuses on making AI decision-making transparent. Instead of thinking of it as like black box, we need to understand how an AI arrives at a diagnosis or treatment recommendation. This transparency is very important. It allows us to crucially identify and correct biases that might be hidden within the model. It builds trust with patients and clinicians who are more likely to accept and use AI systems they understand. And it enables accountability, ensuring that AI is used ethically and responsibly. By prioritizing explainable AI, we can harness the power of AI while safeguarding against its potential harms, building a future where AI can serve all patients quickly and effectively. The journey of AI into healthcare is complex, but promising. AI can revolutionize patient care, improve diagnosis, and personalize treatment. However, ethical and responsible usage is very crucial. Ensuring patient privacy, data security, and unbiased algorithms will allow us to harness AI potential. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks so much for a really in-depth information on how AI is transforming healthcare, Saranya. It's really a privilege for us to have people and speakers from various domains. And my question to you is, as far as AI is concerned, how do you envision AI transforming telemedicine in the hospital or for individual medical practitioners in the next 5 to 10 years, especially in terms of improving diagnostic accuracy remotely?
Thank you. That's a good question. So, one thing I was talking about is there's been a lot of research which going on. It all started with the Dragon, which is basically Microsoft thing where it can read while you're talking to a doctor, it automatically scribes notes and puts into a proper soap notes order. which can be effectively processed and done later. So with AI, these data can be trained effectively with the proper structured nodes. And I believe that telemedicine would be more available for everybody. Like you talk to a doctor via chat. Even before you talk to a doctor, imagine it summarizes all your patient data, your prior history, all your documentation, everything together, and creates a chart. And it can answer basic questions. And if needed, it transfers to the experts. So even before the expert comes in, it can help you diagnose certain things and also give them indication that's okay, this is where they have to focus on and stuff. Basically aiding them. I can think of like each doctor having a robot, a robot which can aid them in that kind of things. So
And
that should
probably instead of doctors complaining patients to not to Google their diagnosis, probably even patients have mini doctor robots or medical practitioner robots for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about it, but I am always concerned like it cannot replace a doctor or a radiologist or this. It can only aid them or assist them. Yeah, the robots would be with them, but they won't replace. That's what my understanding is. So
Yeah,
telemedicine also eventually will have the final decision should be made by a doctor or in person. So yeah.
yeah, definitely. I would echo your thought as well. And we have a couple of more questions in the chat. And having time constraints, we would probably, Saranya would be able to answer those questions in the chat as well. And we would move on to the next speaker. And Karpagam from our WITS team is going to introduce our next speaker, Don Choo.
Thank you.
Karpagam, I think you're mute.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Saranya, for the wonderful presentation, and let's welcome Don. Don is the co-founder of Interview Master, a SQL interview prep platform that helps data professionals land their next role through realistic interview practice and real-time feedback. She has also coached over 15 plus data professional into landing their dream data job. Previously, she worked as a data scientist at Meta and Patron and as a business analyst at Amazon, where she developed a sharp intuition for product data, growth levers, and what makes a strong analytics hire. Today, she blends her industry experience with passion for teaching and creating content and tools that decode the interview process and land job offer. That's a great thing. And let's welcome Don Cho. And off to you.
Hey y'all. Thanks for having me here. Everyone can hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. All right. Since I only have 35 minutes, I'm going to jump right into it. Today, we're going to talk about what is product data science. This is what I have built most of my data science career on. So we'll talk about what is product data science and all the nitty-gritty about how to break in. I had a whole slide on who I am, but Karpagam already did the introduction, so I'm going to skip this slide in the interest of time. Today, we're going to talk about these three. Oh, I should go into slideshow mode. Let's do that. Okay, today I'm going to talk about these three topics. Firstly, what is product data science at all? This is something that you might be interested in building your career in. The second thing we're going to talk about is what skills do you need to be a product data scientist? And then the third thing is how do you break into product data science? Cool. And I think we're going to do questions at the end. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Questions at the end.
Okay. All right. I'm going to leave time for questions at the end, but let's start with what is product data science? So product data science is a very, very common role that you see across all your big tech companies. So I personally did product data science at Meta. So that last job description here on the right. But I've also interviewed at Google. I've know people who have interviewed at Apple. So it's a very, very common type of data science role. Yeah, I guess, yeah. What does product data science really do? It the idea is that you are typically embedded as a data scientist on a product team, right? So a product team would have like a product manager, a lot of engineers, an engineering manager, a designer, right? You have cross-functional partners. And your goal is really to help your team make better decisions by using data. Typically, you would do things like understanding user behavior. So like say if I was working, when I was working at Instagram, I was looking at what would cause people to want to shop on Instagram. We also look at measuring product performance, right? So for example, you look at revenue and you try and figure out what are the drivers of revenue. Identify opportunities for growth and improvement. Oftentimes you're kind of combining that user behavior with the product performance to find gaps or opportunities. Okay, and that was the last data bullet point. So on the next slide, I talk about example product data science projects. So these are actually projects that I worked on in my career. So for example, evaluate if the company is currently working on the right priorities. I did this at Instagram to try and figure out if we should be investing in a particular platform for Instagram shopping. The second example I have here is developing dashboards. So you do spend a lot of time developing dashboards as a product data scientist, because the idea is that you need to be able to help your team understand, or your team and your company understand, how is the product doing. So I did this a lot at my most recent job, which was an education tech startup. So helping monitor the company's revenues and identify like what are our biggest bottlenecks that's preventing us from hitting our revenue goals. And then the third example is building regression models to help identify the most important drivers of churn. I did this when I was at Patreon, trying to understand like what would cause a member to churn from a creator's membership, and then use that information to help your product team decide what to build next. You can see all of them as like data within the context of like deeply embedded within business problems. And that's really what you do as a product data scientist, figure out product and business. All right, how does product data science fit into tech companies? I kind of alluded to this earlier, but we're going to go over it one more time, because I think this is a very big part of product data science, because it's a very collaborative role. Usually you're embedded or assigned to a product team. So a product team could manage something like a specific feature like Instagram stories, or it could manage a whole like business area like revenue. You're expected to be a leader on the product team. So very much like a product manager or a product marketer, you're expected to be a strong voice at the table. And of course, you come in with a lot more insights on the data side of things. Often, exactly that. So act as the quantitative voice in product reviews, right? So when we think about insights on a product team, we think about user insights. So usually a user researcher or a designer would be responsible for talking to users, and then you would be more responsible as a product data scientist for looking at internal data and doing the analyses and highlighting insights there. So you have that balance of like quantitative data insights and qualitative user interviews. And then sometimes you are specifically aligned with product areas, and I see some people building their careers around this. For example, you might focus on doing monetization as like your product area. So I guess if I wanted to, in my last job, I worked in subscriptions, I probably could build a whole career on just subscriptions. Or growth is another one that is really common, right? You focus on everything in the growth funnel and like how to get really, really good at it. Okay, and then last slide, I believe, on the first section, which is what is the difference between product data science and machine learning data science, right? Because they both sound the same and they're both data science roles, and you can do both of them at tech companies. So what really is the difference between these two roles? So for product data science, you're focused on user behavior, product metrics, experimentation. You're very much focused on the business. For machine learning, you're focused on building, training, evaluating, monitoring your machine learning models. On the product side, again, your partners are going to be product managers and your product team in general, and you're trying to help your product strategy, help inform product strategy. Well, for machine learning, your goal is to really build production models. So everything from building the data pipelines all the way to like putting your model in production. That's your work. You are very much in the weeds of building and deploying and monitoring a machine learning model. One last thing, product data science, you're really focused on business impact and product impact and user experience. While on the machine learning side, you're incentivized or you're graded on, you're most successful when you build a very strong model with good accuracy. Okay, I am going to check the chat to see if there are any questions. Okay, no, the questions are for the last presenter. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. So what skills are needed? Well, I'm going so fast. Okay, that's good. We'll probably end earlier. Okay, more time for questions at the end. What skills are needed to be a product data scientist? So we're going to do, I broke this down to technical skills and soft skills. Both are equally important when you think about the process of getting a job and also doing well in your job and getting promoted. So on the core technical skills side, we have SQL, so like advanced SQL. That means know how to do joins very comfortably, know how to do window functions, and know how to optimize queries. I will actually put in this bucket also ETL, so be able to build pipelines. So most of the most successful product data scientists I know can also do data engineering work and vice versa. The second thing is A/B experiment. Very often, as a product data scientist, you're responsible for building out the experimentation platform. So not just running experiments, but also how do you enable your company to run experiments more quickly and more accurately. So this is everything end-to-end from design all the way to interpreting results. And again, like I said, building the experimentation systems. The third thing is being able to do statistical analyses. Like I mentioned earlier, you are building models as a product data scientist, and oftentimes you have to be able to do that in Python. Okay, and last thing, basic machine learning and being able to do predictions. Sometimes as a product data scientist, you'll build up like you mock up machine learning models. You don't actually put them in production, but then you like mock up the first version of it so someone else can take it on and then put it into production later on. Okay, I am like coughing, but I'll push through. Okay, so what about soft skills? I guess I categorize these under product and business skills. So the first thing that's most important is product sense. So because you're embedded on a product team and your whole goal is to drive product strategy, it's really important that you can understand what makes a product succeed and what makes a product fail. So very, very important skills. I'll talk more about how to get good at product sense later on. Communication, this one's really important for a product data science role because you're so much embedded within a product team and your whole goal is to be able to collaborate really well with your cross-functional partners. And so in this case, communication really means like ability to influence people, whether it's a technical partner, like an engineer or data engineer, or your non-technical partners, like your product marketer or your designer. It's important to be able to communicate and build relationships with all of them. And finally, stakeholder management. I think with every job, there are a lot of priorities. So being able to figure out what's the right priority for the team, understand how to manage expectations so people are happy with your work while respecting that you also have boundaries, and also navigating conflicting interests. We see this a lot where, like an engineer might be inclined to want to move slower and, not build up too much tech debt, versus a product manager might want to move more quickly, ship more things just so we can push the product forward more. So being able to navigate all of these conflicting interests is going to be really helpful. And then finally, we have ownership. So like think as if you're a product leader, you're a product manager, you're a product owner. You're not just an analyst. You're not a service desk, right? It's not like people come to you and ask for things and you give it to them and that's it. That's not where your work ends. Your work ends when you are able to drive impact in the product. So not just doing the analysis, but actually being able to land your analysis. All right, cool. I don't see any questions in the chat, so I'm going to keep going. The last and probably most exciting part, which is like how to break into product data science. So the first thing I want to talk about is like common pathways for breaking into product data science. Now, here are the ones I see most commonly. There are probably more ways to do it. Internal transfers. So I've had a lot of coworkers do this, especially at big tech companies, where they start in a different role and then they move into product data science. So the ones you see quite a lot would be people moving from a data analyst or like a product marketing analyst, and then go into data science. Another common one that you see is data engineering going into data science. And then the good thing is also like from product data science, it's really easy to move elsewhere. So I had a close friend who moved from product DS to engineering, and then many people who move from product data science to product management. The second common pathway is transitioning from consulting or other analytics roles elsewhere. So consulting is a big one. I think a lot of consultants end up being product data scientists. I don't really know why, but I imagine it's like a lot of the work is very similar, very strategic, but you're actually in-house and you get to implement a lot of your recommendations. And then finally, you can get directly hired, obviously, into product data science through universities or boot camps. I feel like this happens less common. I feel like product data science is usually a career path that people pivot into a few years out of university, but I definitely have coworkers who are just straight out hired from university, or interns that I managed who were also hired from university. Cool. Let's keep going. What are hiring managers looking for? So kind of another way to think about this section is what interviews should you prepared for if you wanted to become a product data scientist. So the first is coding ability, of course, right? So how good are you at SQL and Python? I've interviewed for a lot of product data science roles in my career, probably over 20 plus product data science interviews from 20 plus companies. Almost all of them have a SQL interview. So I would say SQL is probably the number one most important thing for product data science. Also, quick plug, that's why I built Interview Master. I built it so that you can practice for SQL interviews and get really good at it. Python interviews are less common. I've probably seen it in about like 40 to 60% of the interview jobs I've interviewed for have had a Python interview. Most of these are not DS&A type interviews. They're more like analysis interviews. So they'll give you a data set and then they ask you to just like code up an analysis in Python or code an A/B test in Python. The second one, very, very common interview type is like your product case study interviews, which tests for your product sense. I think I have a whole interviews page after this. Anyway, so product case study interviews are very common. You usually have about 2 to 4 of them in an interview process. So this is like one of the make or breaks. It's like, can you talk through a product feature, understand trade-offs, understand user needs, just general case study interviews. And then communication clarity, I don't think people always understand how important communication is, but I've interviewed as an interviewer for a lot of companies, and almost always communication is its own separate evaluation criteria, right? So it's up there with like coding abilities. Are you able to explain your thought process in a way that is clear and structured, even though you're, encountering a product or a question for the first time? And then finally, these would be like your behavioral interviews. So this is what have you done in the past? Specifically, they're looking for examples where you took ownership of things, or you're able to find a problem, convince people it's a problem worth working on, and then go do the analysis and solve the problem, and also landing impacts. So when you have a recommendation, you're not just making a recommendation, you're also convincing people that's the right thing to do. Okay, so I did talk about product data science interviews. Now let's talk about how to prepare for them. 1 second, just going. Okay, I see some questions, but I think I'll answer them at the end. How do you prepare for a product data science interview? So master, advanced level SQL, this is really, really important. SQL is the number one most common coding interview I've gotten for product data science roles. So another plug, I think. Oh yeah, use Interview Master. Check it out. You can use it for free. So don't feel like you have to pay for the premium subscription right away. Just go ahead and give it a shot. The second thing is to master product sense. This one was the hardest one for me. Coming from a non-tech role, I started my career in finance, and then I moved into tech and product. Product is being able to master product sense was the absolute hardest. And so this is what I recommend: reading the book, Cracking the PM Interview, which I know it's about product management, not product data science, but usually as a product DS, you're working very closely with a product manager, right? So just being able to understand product strategy from a product point of view is so important. I read this book 2 times through. I really recommend it. This one was like the game changer for me to land my first product data science job. And then statistics fundamentals, you don't need to know deep learning or like NLPs or these complex stats topics that are cool and trendy these days. I will focus more on the fundamentals. These are things like understanding your distributions, probability, and then your basic ML models, linear regression, logistic regression, clustering models. I'm blanking on one more. Decision trees, that's what it is. So knowing your basic ML models is going to be all you need. Stanford has a free introduction to statistics course, and I recommend doing this one. University of Michigan also has one if you, for some reason, don't like Stanford. And then finally, make sure you understand A/B experimentation, both on a theoretical level and then on a practical level. So if you have an opportunity to do A/B experiments at your job, or at least like play with the data or observe the process of doing an experiment, I would try to do that, because learning A/B tests theoretically feels very different from actually applying it in real life. Either way, this is the book that everyone in the industry loves. Every data team I've been on has had a book club about this book. It's called Trustworthy Online Control Experiments. It's a book with the hippo on the cover. All right, I feel like I've been talking for a while. But that's it. That's all I have today about product data science. I am going to invite you all to ask any questions. Oh, actually, I'll invite you all to follow me on LinkedIn, follow me on Instagram, Practice SQL Interview Master. But also, if you have any questions, please let me know.
That was a very insightful talk. You have been helping a lot of people and guiding a lot of people to kickstart their career, and it's a great thing. We do have a few questions which are there in the chat box. I'm just going to read it out to you. The role of a product data scientist seems to overlap heavily with the data analyst. What are the key differences? What advice would you give if they would like to transition from data analyst role to a product data scientist?
Oh yeah, okay. So this is a great question. So I started my tech career as a data analyst, technically a business analyst, and I transitioned into product data science. So I'm quite clear about the differences, but of course, every company defines these roles like product data science, ML data science, data analyst, business analyst. Every company kind of defines it a little bit differently. So I think the nice thing is that you do have the agency or the opportunity to shape your role as you want it. But on a high level, the difference between product data science and data analyst is data science tends to be more of a leadership role on the team, right? So sometimes you'll see a product DS on the team with a data analyst. Your work, a lot of it is focused on communication and driving impact rather than just doing the analysis. So instead of just like building a dashboard, you're making sure the dashboard gets reviewed in every leadership review. You go in there, you like have very clear recommendations on how to improve the product based on what you learn from your dashboard. And it's your job to make sure that people are doing what you want them to do. If you're trying to transition from data analyst to product data science, here's what I recommend. I would go back in and just read all of these books and take all these courses and use all these platforms. The big ones for me, again, was cracking the product manager interview. That really was the big game changer for me when I landed my first role. So learn how to think about product strategy.
Thank you. There are a few more questions. Do you see generative AI enhancing the toolkit or strategy for product data science teams? How can product data scientists best leverage Gen AI to improve product features like personalization or user engagement?
Yeah, It's a very good question. From what I'm seeing right now in the current state of generative AI, what AI has been able to do for us is take little parts of what we do in our job and make that a lot easier, right? So if you are inheriting a big hefty piece of code, you might put that into an AI and say, break this down to pieces and explain what it does bit by bit. But if you want to rewrite it, I would probably still do it yourself. Another example of how Gen AI has been used a lot, and we do this a lot actually at work, you write up something and then you say, hey, I'm writing this up for this audience. Can you help me improve the communication? Of course, you want to be more prescriptive in exactly what you're trying to get the AI LLM to do. But then it will take basically what you do and make it better. So the way I see it right now is like, it's able to, what's the word I'm looking for? It's able to help us become more efficient in certain parts of our job, which then leaves you more time to do the fun parts, which is like the communication and the collaboration pieces, and then the actual like strategic thinking. What Gen AI hasn't been able to do, but I know a lot of people have interest in this, is to able to take business context at a very high level and integrate it with the analyses. Right. So like if you build an analysis, the most important thing is like what recommendations can you give? That's what AI cannot do very well right now, because it's still very much, if you're just using like a generic LLM model, so it's not something that's trained for your company or not fine-tuned on your company's data, they'll give you very generic level recommendations like reduce drop-off in your onboarding flow. Like obviously, things that you should already know how to do, but it doesn't really do a good job with very specific company-specific recommendations. But every product data scientist should be using Gen AI every day. I would just pick your favorite LLM model. Like I like ChatGPT, but I go back and forth between ChatGPT and Claude and sometimes Grok and sometimes Gemini. But just pick one of your favorite ones and then just think through every single day, like how can I use this to make myself more efficient?
Yeah, that's really good. But what I see nowadays is people are mostly vibe coding,
I am a vibe coder. So I get I'd say like if you're vibe coding, just make sure you look at what changes the LLM is making to your code, because it can be very scary.
Yeah. Even when I do code reviews, most of them I know that this came from vibe coding. So,
Yeah.
yeah, there are a few more questions. How can we practice some A/B testing knowledge we gain from the books or resources you suggested?
Yeah, I would try to do it if you're able. So if you're already in a full-time job, or I guess if you're already in a company, you don't have to work there full-time. I would try to figure out who's doing experimentation and get your foot in the door that way. Because being able to have practical knowledge is very different than reading it in the books. So yeah, try to find ways to do it in real life. Ideally, the easiest way to do it with the company that you're currently at. If not, I would try and get your hands on some kind of A/B testing data through like volunteering or contract work. There are like other ways you can do it, I think, right? Like so I have a newsletter, which I don't do a good job with, but anyway, I have a newsletter and they have a lot of A/B testing features, right? So maybe even just find a creator and be like, can I help you do an A/B test on your newsletters or on your posts or whatever it is, so you can get some practical experience. I think the reason I say that is like once you go into the real world and do A/B testing, you realize how not clean all the data is, and how much harder it is to work, or how much you just have to make assumptions rather with the data that you have. So that's why practical experience is going to be the most important. So I'll recap that. Try to do it at your current company if you can. Figure out who at your company is doing A/B experiments and go talk to them. If not, contract or volunteer with companies that have a lot of data that you can play with. If not, reach out to a creator or even do it on your own. If you have your own newsletter, whatever it is, use your own data. Try to figure out some ways to get your hands on some A/B testing data.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Another question is, do you need an MBA to pivot into this role from a tech background, example, data engineer?
No, absolutely not. When I was at Instagram, I would say of the 50 data scientists I worked with here and there, I would probably say only 2 to 3 had an MBA. So maybe 5% of people have an MBA. So definitely don't need a master's or don't need an MBA to get into this role. I would say, okay, so you didn't ask this explicitly, but I'll say about 40 to 50% had a master's degree. No, I would say more. So 50% probably had a master's degree in something technical. 5% probably had an MBA, and then the remaining 40 to 45% of us had only a bachelor's degree. So I only have a bachelor's, so you don't need a master's to get into product DS.
Another question is, could you provide some concrete strategies on how to resolve team conflicts, conflicting interest from engineering team versus the product management team?
Yeah, I would say try and understand, from my experience, the best thing is to try and understand what people's motivations are. I think the conflicts usually come from just like, I don't want to say conflicting again, but different priorities. Like a lot of times people are just optimizing for what they're going to be graded on a performance review. And then trying to find some middle ground there. I think a lot of times too is just like trying to get people to compromise and be happy with the compromise that they have agreed to. And then give some, take some, right? Like maybe on this work stream we move super fast, but on this other work stream we go more slowly for engineering. I think this one's a really hard one, but I think try to just connect with people first probably helps a lot, and then realizing it's all a give and take, but at the same time we are all on the same team, we're all kind of working towards the same goal, and so trying to find a middle ground that makes everyone happy. I don't really like the answer I gave for that. I think it's just a difficult question to answer. So, but yeah, that's what I can think off the top of my head.
Yes, absolutely. It depends. You cannot win everything, but you can try. Has vibe coding changed the coding interview strategies at product companies?
No, not the coding interviews. I don't think the coding interviews have changed from vibe coding. I think what may be changing is the cheating software. I'm sure y'all have seen those coding cheating software. I am so against them because I'm like, what are you going to do when you actually go into the job and you have to do the work? What I am seeing happening more and more in job interviews are this, like, they used to have this, like, what do they call it? Like a certain period before they actually make you a full-time hire. I'm totally blanking on the word, but basically like a trial period. So your first 3 months is like a trial period. At the end of 3 months, y'all both decide if it's a good fit. So you and the company both decide it's a good fit. And if it is, you continue your job. But I think this trial period strategy is getting re-implemented because of the cheating that's happening in interviews. And so companies are protecting themselves by having this trial period where they can change their mind on whether or not you're a good hire.
Totally. I have heard from a person, he has he gives a really hard question to anyone he interviews, and if somebody solves that question, he knows that the person has cheated. If you solve like 80%, you are definitely hired.
That's funny. Yes, Jasmine, it's called probationary period. That's the word I was looking for.
Another question is, given the diverse expertise present, I would love to hear a recommendation on the most valuable data science specialization to focus as I'm planning on pursuing a master's trajectory, especially for areas with strong industry demand or emerging research potential. As someone keen to bridge theory and practice, what specialties would the team prioritize today?
Wow. I feel like, okay, this is a question for every interview or every presenter that comes through. I can provide my perspective. I think I'm a bit more risk averse, so I recommend going with more traditional foundational specializations versus going for something that's trendy and new. Most recently, I saw an article about prompt engineering. Y'all remember that from like 2023? Everyone wanted to be a prompt engineer, or like not really everyone, but that a lot of people were talking about prompt engineering. It's like paying so much money to become a prompt engineer, and that job is pretty much gone at this point. So for me, when I see trends like that, I tend to think like, let's focus on the basics of what is important. So like really focusing on like the foundations, right? Do you know how to communicate well? Do you know your basic statistics models and how to apply them? That's one way I'll think about it. And then the second thing, I think that's going to be more important moving forward, especially with AI, is being able to build out domain expertise. So whether you choose to be a finance data scientist or a marketing data scientist, or for me, I consider going down the performance route. So like, how do you make things load fast? How do you reduce the amount of capacity you take when you're processing something? Being able to find a domain that you enjoy and then really go deep in there, I think will help you really stand out as you are coming out of a master's program. But at the end of the day, I would do what feels absolutely the most interesting to you, something you can see yourself doing for many years. And then also recognizing that whatever decision you make today doesn't have to be the decision you make for the rest of your life. Right? Like I plan on living forever. I hope so. Which means I probably have a lot of career changes. So just give yourself the opportunity to change your mind if you have to.
Thank you so much, Don. It was very insightful, and it is very helpful to to help people in this field. And I have seen more engagement, and people are more curious on how to break into data science. And uh, it is very they are very curious actually.
Yeah, if y'all have more questions, message me on LinkedIn. I'll try to get to them. I'm pretty bad about my inbox, but I will try. Just mention that you're here at the WIDS event, and I'll try to respond to you.
Thank you, John. Thank you for taking your time on this Sunday.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Karpagam. Bye, y'all.
Okay, moving on to our next speaker. Niharika is a machine learning engineer at a major financial service company in NYC, working at the intersection of quant finance and AI. She is particularly passionate about building and deploying scalable, robust ML solutions. As PyLadies organizer and WITS ambassador in NYC, she fosters a community of women to collaborate and grow in the field of AI. And let's welcome Niharika. Thank you for being here, and off to you.
Thank you, Karpagam. Thanks for having me in this conference. But yeah, I think I can get started. Let me just try and share my screen. Do you guys see it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we're good. All right, so today I'm going to be talking about from MLOps to LLMOps to AgentOps, and we'll probably dive into what each of them mean and how they are. Karpagam already kind of gave my introduction, so I'm just going to skip this. But yeah, part of work, I love playing board games. I'm a huge adventure lover, and just want to disclaim anything, all thoughts, views, content in this talk are my own and do not represent my employer. With that, I think we can get started with what's machine learning, what's LLMs, what's AI agents. But taking a step back, I just wanted to bring up what's, the kind of evolution of AI. Yesterday, today, tomorrow, we've seen transition of how AI can learn, just, do basic data science, basic analytics, and then we moved on to where they can like supervise, they can actually come up with predictions, forecasting, where you can like learn and repeat. And although this says tomorrow, I think we've already reached it today where AI can like learn, repeat, create, recreate. So like they have their own thought process, they can like course correct and all of that. So as we have transitioned, I think, which I would like to kind of streamline these three stages also as to like how we moved on from like traditional ML models to like LLMs to like now AI agents. And when we think about that, or even the whole business use case, right? So I would kind of frame the whole thing as the 5Ds to success. You're not just building like Jupyter notebooks. So when you have to think about not just defining, but like defining, designing, describing, and deploying, and eventually like driving these machine learning algorithms into production. This is how I think about it, right? So when you start with define, you need to like talk to your stakeholders, talk to your clients, see what the requirement is, what aspect of machine learning actually fits into your use case. Then, of course, you design, your data pipelines, you design your models, and this is where the whole operations and how you want to structure or how you want to architect your product comes into play. And then you kind of describe, okay, what's the best way you can deploy your models? What's the best way you can see how people can, hit the endpoint and then get your predictions? And then once it's actually live and running, how do you drive it to like continuously improve? How do you monitor its success, etc.? So these are the 5 Ds I feel are needed before you start with any problem, be it any machine learning problem. But yeah, I think with this, we can now talk about how you move on from like just building Jupyter notebooks to like production level systems. So I personally actually focus more on the MLOps side of things at work, but then I'm very, very curious, and the industry is moving like really, really rapidly about building and scaling LLMs and AI agents now. So it was very interesting to like understand, read, learn, and also do things on the side. I think this is a diagram everybody has seen. This is like ML 101. So like traditional machine learning, you have input data,
Niharika, if I may, I think we are not able to see the consequence slides. Do you
oh,
want to reshare? Because it's still on the first page.
oh, you're still on the first page?
Yeah.
Oh, oh my God. Okay, give me one sec.
Yes, sure.
Um, how about now?
Yes, we can see traditional ML. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I was just speaking with
Oh, that's
okay.
fine.
I'm just gonna go back and quickly show that this was the evolution of AI slide, followed by the 5 Ds to success, and then from notebooks to production, and then this is where we were at. Yeah. Okay, cool. Moving on. So traditional ML, which is ML 101, and then you have some input data, and then you're trying to figure out the model learns relationships, patterns, hidden structures, and then it's predicting the output, right? And output can be in different types. You can have like unsupervised learning, supervised learning, all of that. So I think the key takeaway here is to kind of see, okay, how are we going to, what are the different moving parts in this system, and what is it that we need to deploy and how, right? So MLOps basically just comes from DevOps, which is like development operations when you're doing for softwares, but here more focused on machine learning models. So few key components are how your data gets processed, how does it transform, how you get it in the right format. The next step comes in, okay, now that you have the data in the right format, what's your training, evaluation, deployment strategy? And then once it's deployed, how do you reproduce, scale, and how do you govern it? So some of the popular tools in the industry are, MLflow, Kubeflow, but then a lot of teams also build this in-house using open source tools, right? So here's a kind of, maybe we can dive deep into what each of these does. So first step, like we discussed, is like you have your data management. So this is where you need to think about data versioning, right? Messy data. I know in industries like healthcare or finance or even legal, data is very, very messy and they're very volatile. So how best to formulate how the data in the right format? How do you, maybe you can use like streaming data, or maybe it is static data. Sometimes you have like language, text kind of data. So all of the different modalities, how best to handle them, I think that comes under your data management when you start thinking about your whole productionizing your whole your system. And then once you do have that, and this is again where the business understanding comes, like you need to understand the business domain, the knowledge, figure out if you need more data. And this is when you start building your feature engineering, right? You need to think about, is there anything else that I need? And that comes into the whole model development. So this is again an iterative process with the business, with you as a developer, with the product side, as well as if you have direct feedback from your potential consumers. So once we move from there, then you come into the model development, and then that's where you have the model testing. So there are times when, let's say you have one model in production, but then you have integrated and you want to do A/B testing with different models, right? You can have multiple candidate models, real time, live. There's inferencing going on, and you're tracking the metrics of how these models perform against each other. So that's when you need to think about the whole CI/CD pipeline, and then how you can A/B test. Um, and then the next is, once you do have deployed, how do you figure out monitoring? So, if you're thinking about service level monitoring, is your model always up and running? So then you have tools like, let's say, Prometheus, Grafana, that will help you track. Let's say you want to see, okay, how your metrics are performing, or you want to have a dashboard which tracks how your model is performing. So like more MAE or MSC or these kind of things. So then I know teams use like really nice Elasticsearch, Kibana dashboards that kind of help you um, figure out how your model is behaving, be it like real time or end of day. And then you end with, and this is when again you have like model registries, right? So you need to think about, okay, different models, what are the different versions, what's the metadata of each of these? And that's where you can have like MLflow has its own ML model registry. And then the loop continues is once you actually see the feedback from the clients, how do you iterate this process? So I think MLOps, this is like very standard. The main key things here is data, model, hosting the model, and then of course the monitoring part of things. The next step of this is now that we've like come across the whole LLMs, high level, I think, they're like huge, massive AI models that are already trained. So I think here we as consumers of LLMs do not need to worry about the whole infra, about how the data was collected, where you're storing it, none of it, right? So it's obviously trained on massive amounts of text data, a lot of billions and trillions of tokens. And then here you're more worried about what's the best prompt that I feed into the LLM to get the output. So the way you use and the way you formulate this system now kind of is different from your traditional machine learning models. So this kind of when I was thinking, I was like, okay, now you have LLMs and also you have different ways of structuring this, right? So you have different ways of using. So for example, the first one is a simple, plain API-centric LLM. You have a large language model, you just deploy it using an endpoint, and then you have a REST API. And then downstream people send requests to it, and then you get the response. So this is like just ChatGPT. You have content generation, summarization. And then the RAG type is again something which a lot of firms have picked up now. It is when you want to have, let's say, context, right? So if you're in a let's say legal or healthcare or any industry for that matter, where you need the large language model to like understand the domain, that's where you have a vector database. You feed in like certain specific context, and then so now you need to think about, okay, how do I have a vector database, and how do I inference it, and how do I retrieve things, and how do I store these embeddings? So there's a little different in terms of the architecture. The third one, and I think this touches a little bit on like the LLM plus workflow orchestration, right? So this is more about, this is where agents come in. So when you have multiple LLMs and then each of them, you have retrieval, you have prompting, you have like inference, and then you have post-processing. And then one agent calls some tools to like fetch some information. So this is kind of how agents are built, but then individually, each of them can have multiple LLMs. So again, I just kind of giving an overview of what they are and now how do we go about actually deploying them, right? And the fourth is pretty much the same. They are fine-tuned private LLMs, but then they are hosted within their own infrastructure. So that's where you have, like, if you want to have full control over like data, and this is, I think, mostly for like finance and healthcare data, things like that, where you want to host it within your own private network, right? So high level, these are your LLM architectures, which leads us to, now that you know the moving blocks are different if you can compare and contrast, right? So here you need to manage embeddings, here you need to manage vector databases, you need to figure out what's the inference speed and cost, and how do you build pipelines for prompt engineering rather than actually storing data per se, So some of the popular tools are like LangChain, Hugging Face, etc. And then this is kind of like a high level overview of what we're doing. So if you see here, you have your data. So you need to figure out how you're going to store your embeddings. You have your pre-trained LLM. So you just need to either enterprise level, you gain access to this pre-trained LLM. But then you want to build your context specific. So then, you need to figure out, okay, how am I going to host this? And then what's the endpoint? How different mobile apps, web apps, and users are going to interact with them. But some things remain constant, like things like model versioning, model caching, model monitoring. So I know when you work with like LangChain, LangGraph, you have something like LangSmith, which helps you like get insights of how your how different steps go through and how your agents are being called. So it's the same concept, I think, as we go behind, but then it differs because now you're working on different tools and different aspects of it. But yeah, I think this is a high level of LLMOps. And then the last part, maybe to just give you an overview, is the agents, right? So now that we moved on from like one LLM doing one thing, agents are high level. If you see, it's like they act autonomously, they perform tasks, they're able to have reasoning, and they have multiple LLMs within them. So here an agent is not just LLM, it has some memory, it has certain tools attached to it, and then it takes in a prompt and then it gives out an output. And there are multiple types. If just on the right, if you see, there's like supervisor agents and hierarchical agents. So just think of it like, oh, you have one agent and that one agent talks to multiple sub-agents. The sub-agents don't interact with each other. So here you have something like a shared state, right? So you have each agent has its own state, or has its own thing where it sends what the result is. And then this state gets transferred from like one agent to another, and that's how they communicate. Right. So just think of agents as like multiple LLMs, and each LLM has corresponding tools. And these tools could be, let's say, certain APIs, or if you want to retrieve certain documents, so it could be like a document loader, it could be different functions, it could, you could hit like some other Yahoo Finance API for that matter. So this is obviously more robust, and then it improves over time. And then you have each agent has some goals, and then one main agent determines what it needs to do, which agent to call, and then decisions are made. So this is again important because the kind of agent you build determines what kind of architecture you have, right, in production. So yeah, a high level what we went through. So here the key focus area is how you can manage these dynamic API interactions, how you can implement. Main things here is planning, memory, context awareness, right? And one key thing I feel which comes with agents is like the whole security and the whole ethics, and what data is being transferred from like one agent to another. How do you detect the performance of these, and etc. So these are some key things that you need to kind of consider. But yeah, there are a lot of frameworks. I always joke, like every time I try to read about one framework, another one is released in the market. So it's there are a lot of teams working right now, but I think the common things amongst all of them and how you end up using this is you need to think of these 5 things, right? You need to think of, okay, you have your model. How do I interface through which agent, can interact with your LLM? And then now that you have that, what framework is the best for my use case, right? Most popular ones, and I think the ones that I have tried are LangChain, LangGraph. How do they have inbuilt things to call certain LLMs? Then the next you think about is, okay, what's the storage? How do I retain information about its state? Where can I store this? And then does it have functionality to like interact with the tools and libraries for my use case? Because agents are very specific, right? They're very specific to your use case that you want to build. And at the end of the day, you think about, okay, how do I deploy an agent and how do I make it accessible as a service? So these are the 3-5 things, which again is very, very different from our traditional ML, where you were thinking about data pipelines, and then like hosting your model and all of that. But yeah, I think to summarize, and thanks to ChatGPT to help bring this table, I think it's more about, okay, how does the models versus LLMs versus AI agents. So here in ML models, you are building your own custom model, whereas LLMs is mostly pre-trained. The input formats can be different, but most of it, I think the serving tools are mostly like ML Flow, Fast API, and then here for LLMs, you have like Hugging Face. For AI agents, I think the most common ones are LangChain, LangGraph. Again, in terms of model hosting, you need to think about, okay, whether you want it on-prem cloud, or that it's like API based, or do you just want to not worry about hosting it and just get it at an enterprise level from like OpenAI, for example, and use your LLMs there. So then you don't have to worry about hosting. but everything else kind of remains the same, right? You think about how you are monitoring, and then it's just the tools differ. So here we use Prometheus Grafana. In AI agents, you can think about things like Langsmith. And if latency is a big concern, then again, that's something you need to think about. So I think high level, depending on your use case, very simple. You can do a sentiment analysis. You can deploy it as a machine learning model. You can do sentiment analysis using like ChatGPT, or you can even build a whole AI agent around it. So I think the way to think about, with my experience, is like figure out what's the use case, what's the best fit, and what's the scope, what are the priorities, right? And of course, think about like the revenue, the impact that's having, how much cost it's taking the company, and things like that. So that's kind of how I would summarize choosing between these three. But of course, each one has its own, there are use cases where obviously AI agents are definitely better. So even if it does brings about all of these extra components of the overhead of setting these things, I think you will obviously have much better benefit of moving with like building an agent. But yeah, I think to summarize it, all of them are kind of interrelated. It's just subparts, MLOps, LLMOps, AgentOps. It's really exciting to see. I know AgentOps is still very, very naive. I myself have tried running things on like Jupyter notebooks, but like productionizing it, there's definitely a lot of challenges there. But it's really exciting to see where the industry is going forward with this. But yeah, I think that was all about. And thank you. Happy to take any questions. You can always reach out to me on LinkedIn as well.
Thank you so much, Niharika and other presenters today, and for making the WITS conference, the virtual conference, a great success, and also making it very interactive for us. If you have any questions for Niharika, please go ahead and shoot your questions, and then within the next 2 minutes. Otherwise, we'll wrap things up.
There are a few questions on the chat. So one of the question is from Aarti itself. Do you want to ask Aarti?
Sure. So thank you so much. It was a very interactive session, and in the 2 days, we've been hearing a lot about MLOps, and a lot of us have experiences at our workplace also. I was curious, Niharika, as to what you think are the best tools that are available today, in particular model versioning, which is one step in the MLOps pipeline.
Yeah, I think model versioning, there's definitely ML model registry. As much as that's good, because I know you have like different versions, you can have multiple, I think as and when you upload, you can have like multiple versions of it, and then you can also download it. You can have the same model name, but then it can have V1, V2, V3. And I know ML Flow was something with, and the model registry was something that I've used. But I'm sure there are others as well.
Others, yeah. ML Flow is very familiar. How
Yeah.
about model registry? I haven't heard about that. Is it a Docker, the Docker Hub based, or something else?
It's mostly uploaded on the cloud. For us, we have like a wrapper around it, so which is within the firm. But then eventually, for us, and I think what my team does is abstracted for me, but then it is written to the cloud.
Understood.
Yeah, and we do the same as well. So like, for us, the capability of the model registry that's given to us isn't really helpful. So for us, we actually just use like S3. So you load models through that and bring it down. So, but I'm sure there are like other tools out there that will help.
Got you. Yeah. And we never really thought about S3 being a model registry kind of a thing. That's something good to know. Yeah.
What do you all use?
ML Flow is very popular in that space because of the versioning. You can version control the models, and also the data used for fine-tuning the model, and allows you to go back in time, point in time. And if you want to roll back your models in production because of, let's say, performance or model drift, that allows you to do that. Yeah.
For sure, yeah. Yeah, I think for us, there's always like before we implement something, there's always a wrapper. So it kind of needs to be available within the firm for us to start using it. So I think there is I think a guardrail or a barrier, I would say. So we've dabbled with ML Flow, but it's very primitive, at least within the firm.
Got you.
Yeah. I do see some other questions. So it says, I think Muna has a question. The kind of agent you build determines what kind of architecture. Would you please elaborate on it? Sure. I think so. The slide which actually had like multi-agent. So I think in terms of things that you need to deploy, like let's say if you need some storage or if you need just to deploy your LLMs, that remains constant. But then if you're building like a supervisor agent or a single agent or let's say multi-hierarchical agent, it just multiplies by the number of things that you need to handle in terms of like endpoint hitting, in terms of coordination and things like that. But that's what I meant by, whether you're building a single agent or a multi-agent or hierarchical or supervisor, and the number of tools that you have. So it kind of, extrapolates into the kind of architecture and different small microservices that you have to keep running to handle all of these. I hope.
There is one more question. Would you please show or share the screenshot of the second last slide of yours where I think you show the relationship?
Sure. Let me. Am I not sharing? Give me 1 sec. Okay. Is she talking about this one? The difference? Second last time is.
Yes, I
No,
guess.
the next one, actually. Like maybe that is the last one. I
Sorry.
think slide.
Sorry?
I think the last slide
Oh,
before.
the last one. This one?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I wanted to see this relationship. So I think MLOps is the highest space, and then LLMOps, AgentOps. So
Yeah. It's something like it's all machine learning, right? It's just different flavors. Like at the end of the day, it's like machine learning, deep learning, AI. Everything comes under AI. Then you have machine learning, and then obviously deep learning is a subset of it. So I guess it's a similar.
Okay.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing this topic up. I always get confused, and the way I remember this is deep learning, like Niharika said, is more neural net based program, whereas machine learning, it's the standard where you allow machines getting trained with either labeled or unlabeled data, so that they can make predictions without us programming for the machine, right? So I think machine learning is a broader subset, and deep learning is very particular to technologies using the neural net. And today, with the agentic AI being an area where a lot of us are seeing promises yet to be monetized, then that becomes a subset of LLMOps. And I believe in this circle, Niharika, the reason that you put LLMOps as a subset of MLOps is because MLOps can mean LLMs or audio models, embeddings. The subset is broader, right?
Yeah, I think ML is definitely broader, right? So LLM is very specific to just like large language models, right? But machine learning kind of takes over everything, computer vision and multimodalities and everything.
Yeah, text and images.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Niharika. It was very insightful.
No worries. Thank you. Hi.
Thank you all. So let's wrap up the session, and that's all for today. And thank you to all the speakers who took their time out of Sunday, and thank you to Niharika as well. There are 2 more sessions on next Saturday and Sunday, and I if everyone can join, and if everyone finds this useful, please try to join, and also try to connect with speakers on the LinkedIn, ask them your questions, try to interact as much as possible, and we really wish you well. Happy Sunday, and especially happy Mother's Day to all the moms, and who are also trying to take their time out of Sunday. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Before we wrap up, your WITS coordinator, the ambassador, would certainly stay in touch with you regarding recordings and also posting your recordings. And this is applicable to the presenters today. Recordings and postings, please keep in mind that your WITS ambassadors would stay connected with you about it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.